Chapter 2633. At this moment, everyone on Lan Hongtai's side expressed that they could not let the Yu clan stay in the Lan clan. Otherwise there would be endless trouble. Lan Jingquang's face turned ugly when he heard what Lan Borong and the others said. Now that all the problems were concentrated on him, if he couldn't come up with a compromise plan, it would really be a disaster for both sides if word got out. Lan Jingquang could not help but look at second elder Lan Kaicheng. At this time it was obvious that he could not rely on himself. Lan Kaicheng saw Lan Jingquang's eyes and immediately said, "Clan head, Master Quang is right. Now the Yu clan has all come. If we let them see us like this, once word gets out, our Lan clan will be labeled as heartless and unrighteous." With second elder Lan Kaicheng taking the lead to express his stance, the elders of this faction also expressed their stance one after another. Although they were also worried about the Lan clan's situation, this was a time of internal and external troubles. Nan Qingyan's injuries had not recovered yet. If they drove the Lan clan away, the situation would be even worse. Other than Lan Jingquang's loyal followers, most of the elders expressed their opposition. Even if word gets out, it will be bad for our Lan clan's reputation. It is still better than offending an extremely powerful poison master. That's right. That poison master is so powerful. Once he targets us, our situation will not be any better than the Yu clan. At this time, the clan's interests are still the most important. Nan Hongtai's expression was very calm. From the beginning to the end, he did not want to have anything to do with the Yu clan. What happened in the past had become a knot in his heart. Now that the Yu clan had fallen to such a state, he almost clapped his hands and cheered. Lan Hongtai had long been unwilling to say anything to his son, Lan Jingquang. Now that Lan Jingquang was in trouble, he was also unwilling to say anything. The elders on both sides were arguing, each with their own opinions. However, without exception, everyone felt that the Yu clan's appearance was a big trouble. Lan Jingquang was also suffering. Who would have thought that the support he had painstakingly gained over the years would collapse overnight? Now, his enemies in the clan were laughing at him. Finally, after a discussion among the elders, Lan Hongtai made a decision. That was to settle the Yu clan in a place a certain distance away from the Lan clan. In this way, no one would say that the Lan clan was ungrateful. At the same time, they would be able to keep a certain distance from the Yu clan and not threaten the Lan clan. However, at the same time, Lan Hongtai also expressed that they would not continue to live with the Yu clan like this. The Yu clan had to find a place to settle down as soon as possible. The Yu clan side, Lan clan and the Yu clans, and the Yu clan's people. So their help was only for a short period of time. Lan Jingquang felt helpless about Lan Hongtai's decision, but there was nothing he could do. Most of the Yu clan's families is his clan. Lan clan's clan, S's clan with the clans use leave? If it was said that the Yu clan came because of their previous power and influence, then the Lan clan would have no choice but to treat them with caution. However, the Yu clan today was no longer the same as before. They were no longer a threat to the Lan clan. Chapter 2634. Inside the room. Family head, will there be any problems if we just let the Yu clan stay here? Lan Borong furrowed his brows. He felt that something was wrong with the Yu clan's sudden request for their help. The Yu clan has met with such a disaster. It won't be long before the news spreads throughout the entire Shangxian continent. At that time, those who have a grudge against the Yu clan will have other thoughts. However, we can only help them temporarily. We can't keep them here forever. You mean to say that we're only doing this to stop people from talking? Lan Borong immediately understood the meaning behind Lan Hongtai's words. In fact, as Lan Hongtai's confidant, he was very clear about Lan Hongtai's thoughts. Lan Hongtai nodded. Our Lan clan has always been in close contact with the Yu clan. If we refuse them at this time, it will be very detrimental to our Lan clan's reputation. However, as long as the influence of the Yu clan's matter passes, no one will care about what happens afterwards. As the family head of the Lan clan, Lan Hongtai understood this matter very well. It was enough as long as they didn't have any evidence against them. As for what happened afterwards, they could find any reason and leave on bad terms. Lan Borong immediately understood the family head's thoughts inside in his heart. It seemed that after Lan Yunxiao left the Lan clan, the family head's heart had already died. He could see the sinister glint in Lan Hongtai's eyes when he mentioned the Yu clan. Lan Hongtai had never let go of this grudge. He was afraid that when everyone recovered from the shock of the Yu clan's matter, the first person to make a move against the Yu clan would not be his enemy, but Lan Hongtai. "How's your investigation going?" The coldness in Lan Hongtai's eyes dissipated and was replaced by deep concern. Currently, he was most curious about Bailey Hongzhuang. As for the Yu clan's matter, he didn't care about it at all. "I've sent people to gather information, but everyone seems to be keeping the identity of this Bailey Hongzhuang a secret, so the information I've gathered is not complete." Lan Borong's tone was filled with helplessness. Originally, he thought that it would be easy to find out about Bailey Hongzhuang's background. However, the entire Limitless Palace didn't seem to know anything about Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, he didn't know where to start. "There's no news from Shitian Pavilion either?" Lan Hongtai's brows wrinkled. Recently, this was the only thing he cared about. Lan Borong nodded. The young master of Shitian Pavilion has a very good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang, so Shitian Pavilion directly rejected this mission. As soon as he said this, Lan Hongtai's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise. She has a good relationship with the young master of the Heaven Slaughter Tower. As far as he knew, Shitian Pavilion had always been neutral and didn't have a close relationship with any forces. He didn't expect that this young Bailey Hongzhuang could actually have a connection with the young master of Shitian Pavilion. This is the special characteristic of Bailey Hongzhuang. According to the information I've gathered, this Bailey Hongzhuang seems to have appeared out of thin air, but she has a very good relationship with many forces. Chapter 2635. Which forces are on good terms with Bailey Hongzhuang? Tiangang Sect, Shitian Pavilion, Cloud Sword Sect, and Sun Moon Palace, Lan Borong answered truthfully. When the Lan family disciples returned, they didn't know much about these matters. It was only after they carefully understood what had happened in the Battle of Zhuolu that they learned about it. Sun Moon Palace? Hearing this name, Lan Hongtai's expression changed abruptly, and his dark and deep eyes suddenly emitted an incredulous light. Lan Borong nodded. Sun Moon Palace has been in seclusion all these years and has never participated in these activities. But this year they unexpectedly participated. Speaking of this, Lan Borong couldn't help but look at Lan Hongtai with suspicion. "Family head, do you think there's a connection between them?" Lan Hongtai's expression was very complicated. He didn't immediately answer Lan Borong's question and instead asked seriously, "Are you sure that Bailey Hongzhuang looks very similar to Yun Xiao and Lingbing?" "Very similar." Lan Borong was very sure. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang for the first time, he couldn't help but be shocked, because they were really too similar. So similar that it was inconceivable. He simply couldn't believe that people who weren't related by blood could be so similar. This was also the reason why he was so sure that Bailey Hongzhuang was Lan Yishuan without any evidence. The light in Lan Hongtai's eyes grew brighter and brighter. His calm and indifferent face couldn't help but show excitement. His face flushed red, as if he was extremely pleasantly surprised. He was very clear about the connection between Sun Moon Palace and Mu Lingbing. However, after that incident, Sun Moon Palace had once come to the Yu family to question them. Then, Sun Moon Palace gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and Sun Moon Palace had reappeared, perhaps there was a connection between the two. Perhaps Sun Moon Palace had done something that he didn't have time to do back then? If that was the case, it would be the best news. Although Lan Hongtai didn't know why Bailey Hongzhuang had become the young palace master of Wuji Palace, he only cared about whether Lan Yunxiao and the others were still alive. As long as he was still alive, it was enough to make him happy. Although Lan Hongtai didn't speak, Lan Borong could see some clues from Lan Hongtai's expression. His whole body relaxed a bit. If they were still alive, that would be great. "Bailey Hongzhuang will be here soon," Lan Hongtai said slowly. Lan Borong nodded. "In a few days, when the divine pond of ice and snow opens, Bailey Hongzhuang will come. Patriarch can go and take a look then." All right. Lan Hongtai's lips curled into a smile. No matter what, when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang with his own eyes, he would have a better understanding. Since we can't find anything, let them come back. Stop investigating. Lan Borong frowned. If that was the case, they wouldn't be able to get any information. All these years, it's precisely because they've protected their information so well that we haven't heard anything about them. Now that even the heaven-devouring pavilion was on their side, it would be impossible to get any information. Since that was the case, it was better not to investigate. Chapter 2636. Lan Hongtai was very clear that Shitian Pavilion was the #1 information source in Shangxian continent. If they wanted to spread false information, it would be impossible to guard against them. Rather than that, it was better to give up the investigation. He believed that when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, many things would be clear. He knew Lan Borong's character very well. If he wasn't very confident, Lan Borong wouldn't have made such a conclusion. Whether it was Lan Yunxiao or Mu Lingbing, they weren't ordinary people. This Bailey Hongzhuang was most likely related. Lan Hongtai faintly felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was his granddaughter, Lan Yixuan. Now that he thought about it again, the conflict between Lan Qingyan and Bailey Hongzhuang was so big, perhaps it was related to this matter. Hearing Lan Hongtai's words, Lan Borong immediately understood. I will have them come back. Family head. Qingyan's poison still shows no signs of being cured. If this continues, the situation won't be optimistic. Lan Borong's eyes revealed helplessness. He originally thought that Yu Siqing would be able to cure Lan Qingyan, but after such a long time, Lan Qingyan still showed no signs of improvement. He took a quick glance at Lan Qingyan and saw that she was already weak beyond recognition. If this continued, Lan Qingyan wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Looking at the situation, the person who poisoned Qingyan doesn't seem to want to take her life. They are just torturing her. Lan Hongtai's eyes flashed with wisdom. If they wanted to poison someone to death, Lan Qingyan would have died long ago. Why would they wait for so long? That's right. Qingyan is in pain every day. Long ago, Lan Borong already understood the characteristics of this poison from Lan Jingquang's mouth. Speaking of which, the other party was really ruthless. It was obvious that they hated Lan Qingyan. When Bailey Hongzhuang comes, this matter should be resolved. Lan Hongtai slowly said. Now that things had reached this point, they had no other way. After all, if even Yu Siqing couldn't cure the poison, they couldn't find a better doctor. Yu Siqing seems to be wholeheartedly trying to cure the poison in her clan. She doesn't care much about Lan Qingyan's situation. That woman has always put her own interests first. Now that the Yu clan is within our Lan clan's territory and is seeking our protection, let her put all her attention on Qingyan. Lan Hongtai's voice was cold. Yu Siqing was the person he hated the most in the Yu clan. This woman had the heart of a snake and scorpion. If it wasn't for Lan Qingyan's sake, he wouldn't be able to transfer the rainbow pearl from Lan Yixuan's body. Then none of these things would have happened. Once this matter was settled, he would kill Yu Siqing with his own hands. This vicious and powerful woman should have gone to hell long ago. I understand, Lan Borong replied. The Yu clan Lan Qingyan was to come to seek to obtain to help to seek was to seek to ask for help. They had originally come to seek help from the Lan family. Although they were now within the Lan family's sphere of influence, there was still a certain distance between them. Clearly, the Lan family was unwilling to bear the risk of a poison master appearing. Chapter 2637. Jingquang, no matter what, I am still your father-in-law. You don't even allow me to stay in the Lan family. Isn't that too much? Yu Taotian's face was filled with displeasure. Even though the Yu family had encountered some difficulties, the Lan family's actions were like burning the bridge after crossing the river. Father-in-law, I want to help but I am powerless in this matter. Lan Jingquang sighed. He naturally knew that this matter would definitely incur Yu Taotian's displeasure. Hence, he could only use this bitter act. Fortunately, he now had sufficient reason to do so. Qingyan's poison has not been cured yet. Many people in the family feel that Qingyan will not be able to survive this time. Once Qingyan is gone, with the master's personality, I will not be able to inherit the position of the master. My status will naturally plummet. Father-in-law, you should be aware of my current situation. Yu Taotian was originally filled with anger. However, after hearing Lan Jingquang's words, he could not help but sigh. Just like what Lan Jingquang said, he had already expected this situation. He had always been very satisfied with this son-in-law of his all these years. If something really happened to Lan Qingyan, not only would Lan Jingquang's days be difficult, the help that the Yu family received from the Lan family would also be greatly reduced. If Lan Qingyan was still fine, the Lan family would not allow them to stay in such a place. Thinking of this, Yu Taotian could not help but say to Yu Siqing, you should think of a way to cure Qingyan's poison. This is the most important thing now. Yu Siqing had always wanted to cure the poison in the disciples, so that they would not be powerless when the other party poisoned them again. However, she felt that the other party would not come again for the time being. The most important thing now was to solve Lan Qingyan's problem. Hearing this, Yu Siqing's expression was somewhat complicated. However, she still nodded, I understand. After hearing Yu Siqing's reply, Lan Jingquang also heaved a sigh of relief. He only had one daughter, Lan Qingyan. If something happened to Lan Qingyan, all his years of hard work would be in vain. This was something that he could not tolerate. Yu Manlan was taking care of Lan Qingyan. Now Lan Qingyan was so weak that she could not speak. The pain every day made her feel weak. Sometimes she wished she could just die like this, but most of the time she was afraid of death. When Yu Siqing arrived, Yu Manlan quickly stood up. She didn't know why Yu Siqing suddenly came here. During the journey, other than coming to help Lan Qingyan when she couldn't take it anymore, Yu Siqing didn't care about her at all. I will think of a way to deal with Qingyan. You can go back first. Yu Siqing was in a terrible mood, but she had no choice but to lower her head when she was within the Lan family's sphere of influence. Right now, their Yu clan strength was really too weak. Once someone wanted to make a move on their Yu clan, it would really be impossible to guard against it. However, she had already researched Lan Qingyan's poison for a long time. If she could detoxify it, she would have done so long ago. But now she had a feeling that the more she researched, the more frustrated she felt. She couldn't find any way to solve it. Now it wasn't just the Yu clan that had suffered a huge blow. Lan Jingquang and the others' positions in the Lan clan had also fallen greatly. This could be seen from the situation in the conference hall. Chapter 26:38. Ever since she had sensed that strange aura outside her house and the explosion in her house, she had a bad premonition. At that time she already felt that this was a conspiracy and that things weren't that simple. However, she had investigated and found no clues, so she gradually relaxed. Lan Jingquang had also investigated and found that Lan Hongtai and the others didn't make any movements. Couldn't be the Lan clan. As for the Sun Moon Palace, they could also ignore them. Mu Jin's was getting closer and closer to death. Moreover, with her ugly appearance, she couldn't appear in front of anyone. However, after the incident this time, Yu Siqing increasingly felt that this was a huge conspiracy. The other party's goal was to destroy the entire Yu clan. Although in their opinion, the Yu clan had already fallen to such a miserable state, they probably hadn't achieved the result that the other party wanted. This was what Yu Siqing was most worried about. If the other party wanted to destroy the Yu clan, no one would be able to neutralize that terrifying poison. Their seemingly powerful defense wouldn't be of any use. This feeling was really enough to make them collapse. Therefore, even if the Lan clan was treating them coldly, they could only choose to swallow their anger. Once they left, their situation would be even more difficult. Such a terrifying opponent was enough to make them unable to sleep at night. Hearing Yu Siqing's words, Yu Manlan's eyes were filled with joy. "And then I'll have to trouble you." Yu Manlan was pleasantly surprised. These days she had asked Yu Siqing for help many times, but Yu Siqing had always been unwilling to pay attention to her. She didn't know why her attitude had suddenly taken a 180-degree turn today. Just like that, the Yu clan settled down not far from the Lan clan. However, the Yu clan requested that the Yu clan send more people to increase their security. Lan Hongtai didn't refuse this request. Since everyone would be paying attention to this matter when the time came, it was better to put on a show now. As the news of the Yu clan's relocation spread, all the forces in the Shangxian continent were shocked. 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100. Everyone was shocked that the Yu clan, which had existed for many years, had been completely destroyed in just 2 days. The Yu clan master, Yu Taotian, had no choice but to bring the remaining Yu clan members to seek help from the Lan clan. This news was too shocking. However, when everyone found out that the reason for the Yu clan's downfall was because of their opponent's poisoning, everyone's expression became even more interesting. If the other party had used force to hurt the Yu clan to this extent, everyone would still be able to understand. After all, the Yu clan was a medical family. Cultivation had never been their forte. But now, the other party had defeated them in their strongest aspect. Not only did Yu Siqing, who was known as the #1 expert in medicine and poison, not only did she not have a solution, she could only run away like a stray dog. This was too ironic. The Yu clan is usually so arrogant, I never thought that they would actually fail miserably this time. This is really interesting. The other party deliberately defeated them in their strongest aspect. This is also a kind of humiliation. Chapter 2639. For a moment, many powers rejoiced in their misfortune. They would occasionally seek help from the Yu clan, but every time the Yu clan demanded an exorbitant price, they would feel speechless. Although they were very dissatisfied, they had no other way except for Yu Siqing. Thus, they could only helplessly endure. Now that the Yu clan had fallen to such a state, compared to their usual arrogant faces, it was really delightful. However, some people couldn't help but sympathize with the Yu clan. Offending such a terrifying poison master was really a sleepless night. This time, the other party was able to poison the majority of the Yu clan members without anyone noticing. Next time, the Yu clan members would also die in their sleep. The most frightening thing was that the Yu clan didn't know who their opponent was from the beginning to the end. This kind of feeling was really too frightening. Naturally, Limitless Palace also received this news. Nangong Wu already knew that the Yu clan situation would be very miserable. However, after hearing the exact news, she couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Lin Feng, your disciples' methods are really comparable to yours. As expected, people who aren't from the same family are bound to enter the same house. Nangong Wu sighed and shook her head, but her face was full of smiles. At that time, Yu Linfeng had relied on his own strength to kill his way out of the encirclement. The record he had created was also extremely shocking. And now, Yu Linfeng's disciple had also relied on his own strength to directly destroy the entire Yu clan. Even if the Yu clan still had some people left, after Bailey Hongzhuang's follow-up actions, they would all be wiped out. However, this kind of feeling was really domineering and satisfying. Yu Linfeng's gentle jade-like face rippled with a cool breeze-like smile. The Yu clan reaped what they sowed. Towards an enemy, one should kill them in one blow. There was no need for pity or sympathy. Bailey Hongzhuang's actions this time could only be said to be beautiful. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing couldn't help but be shocked when they knew that the Yu clan had turned into stray dogs because of Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. Previously, when Bailey Hongzhuang came back, she only told them that she had poisoned them. However, she did not elaborate on the specifics. They knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were very good, but they didn't expect it to be so destructive. After the initial shock, the two of them only felt one thing, and that was satisfaction. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing would never forget the time when they knelt in front of the Yu family, while holding Yixuan in swaddling clothes. The Yu family's high and mighty attitude, the feeling of having their dignity trampled on was deeply buried in their memories. They would never forget it for the rest of their lives. And now, the infant who had been persecuted by the Yu clan had turned into an avenger, and came to the Yu clan to take back everything. Yun Xiao, Yixuan has already pulled open the curtain of revenge. We should also work hard. Mu Lingbing's lips curled into a radiant smile. For the past 19 years they had endured all the humiliation. Now it was time for them to take it all back. Their daughter was one step faster than them, and as parents they couldn't be too slow. Hearing this, Lan Yunxiao nodded. The depths of his eyes flickered as a biting cold light quietly flitted past. Back then, he had cared about his brotherly affection and allowed his wife and daughter to reach this step. 19 years later, he would definitely not make the same mistake. Chapter 2640. When the news of the Yu clan had spread throughout the entire Shangxian continent, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had already embarked on their journey to the Lan clan. Bailey Hongzhuang had never been to the Lan clan, even though it was her former home. As an infant, she did not have any memories of the past. She was once born in this clan. Her parents were once greatly supported here. They had also tasted a bloody lesson here and paid a huge price. Today she was about to return to this land. My wife, the 3 months are almost up. The poison in Lan Qingyan's body should have stopped acting up soon, right? Di Beichen's long eyebrows slanted. When he was in the Yu clan, he had always heard the news of Lan Qingyan being tortured beyond recognition by this poison. Now that such a long time had passed, it was really hard for him to imagine that Lan Qingyan would become like this. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Then the effect of the poison is about to dissipate. It seems that Yu Xiqing's poison skills are really incomparable to yours. After such a long time, she still hasn't figured out a way to neutralize it. Di Beichen's eyes were clear and bright. His deep, dark eyes revealed an unconcealable appreciation and admiration. His wife's methods in other aspects were really amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips slightly curved, her beautiful eyes as clear as water. I had overestimated Yu Xiqing previously. I thought that she would only need to spend some time to neutralize this poison. However, it seems that her level is still not enough. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's bright and beautiful eyes, full of youthfulness and vitality. His heart was slightly moved. This time when we arrive at the Lan clan, I'm afraid that Lan Qingyan's people will make things difficult for you. Di Beichen frowned. With Lan Qingyan's vengeful personality, she will definitely not let us enter the ice-snow pool so easily. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Grandfather and grandmother are already waiting for us at the Lan clan. If the Lan clan dares to make a move against us, grandfather and grandmother will appear. I believe that the Lan family will not dare to do anything to us due to the circumstances. Oh, Di Beichen was surprised. Why didn't I know about this? Bailey Hongzhuang stuck out her tongue. Her charming face filled with slyness. My mother told me before we left. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were working hard to raise their strength, so they couldn't come with them. However, because they were worried about their safety, they had already discussed this matter with Siti Yan and Mu Jins. They would protect Bailey Hongzhuang and Mu Jins well. Once the two sect masters arrived, even if the Lan family wanted to make things difficult for them, they would have to think twice. Right now, the Yu clan was no longer a force to be reckoned with. If the Lan clan wanted to resist the Tiangang sect and the Sun Moon Palace, it would obviously be difficult. Therefore, no matter how dissatisfied Lan Qingyan was, she could only endure it. They had to go to the divine pond of ice and snow. No one would let go of such a good opportunity to increase their strength. When they came out of the divine pond of ice and snow, it would be time for them to face the Lan clan. Lan Jingquang, Yu Man Lan Qingyan, this hypocritical and filthy family, their good days were about to come to an end. Wife, have you thought about what the Lan clan's attitude would be when they find out about your identity? Di Beichen pondered for a moment before asking the question in his heart. Chapter 2641. As Di Beichen's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyelids drooped slightly. The sun shone on her fan-like eyelashes, casting a shadow, making people unable to see what she was thinking. Di Beichen also felt complicated about this point. Back then, the Lan family had gone overboard by doing such things to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. But no matter what, the Lan family was still the family that Bailey Hongzhuang truly belonged to. Lan Yunxiao's brothers and sisters were all here. They could face the Yu family without any misgivings, but what kind of attitude should they face the Lan family? Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was also conflicted about this point, which was why Bailey Hongzhuang had never brought it up. But now that they were about to head to the Lan family, they naturally had to consider the situation clearly. Otherwise, they wouldn't know what to do next. Bailey Hongzhuang was silent for a moment, then said, "There are only two possibilities. The first is that everyone stands on Lan Jingquang's side and feels alarmed and hostile towards our appearance. The second is that a portion of people care about old friendships and stand on our side." She had thought about this matter before. Although the Lan family was her family, she was unfamiliar with this family. Aside from the news she heard, she knew nothing about the Lan family's situation. In reality, she was also very clear that what had happened back then had been a conspiracy by Lan Jingquang and his faction. Not everyone in the Lan family had wallowed in the mire. It was just that the others had chosen to ignore and compromise in the end, leaving them bitterly disappointed. Betrayal, that was a feeling of betrayal. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't experienced that scene, she could imagine Lan Yunxiao's feelings just by thinking about it. This feeling was undoubtedly extremely painful. No matter how the others apologized, the damage had already been done. However, it was also impossible for Bailey Hongzhuang to destroy the entire Lan family. Although the majority had chosen to compromise, there were still clansmen who had fought alongside Lan Yunxiao to the end. They couldn't hurt these people. Di Beichen nodded. It's been so many years. Lan Jingquang's influence in the Lan family has grown. I'm sure many people have become his people. However, Lan Qingyin's incident this time will most likely cause quite a bit of trouble for Lan Jingquang. His influence will also weaken a bit. I believe that even after so many years, the hearts of those who fought alongside father will not waver. Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black eyes flickered with a cold and proud light. She had enough confidence in Lan Yunxiao's abilities. Although the majority of the people had compromised with Lan Yunxiao's position in the Lan family, there were still many people who supported him, just like Yu Linfeng. Even though Lan Yunxiao had disappeared for so many years and everyone thought he was dead, Yu Linfeng still remembered him and the kindness he had shown him back then. Lan Yunxiao and Lan Jingquang were fundamentally different. Lan Jingquang relied on benefits to subdue people, but Lan Yunxiao was enough to convince people wholeheartedly. This was the reason why Lan Jingquang couldn't compare to Lan Yunxiao back then. After that incident, Lan Yunxiao viewed Lan Jingquang as an enemy. Presumably, Lan Yunxiao's faction also viewed Lan Jingquang as an enemy. Chapter 2642. You're right. There must be a lot of people in this huge Lan clan who support Uncle. Di Beichen's brows were filled with certainty. It was because of this that he felt that they needed to think more before confronting the Lan clan. From what I know, the Lan clan's clan head was furious after the incident. He even wanted to fall out with the Yu clan. However, in the end, he was forced to compromise because of the clan's interests. However, all these years, the Lan clan's clan head has never been kind to Lan Jingquang. He has always been thinking about your father. Although the Lan clan situation was rather secretive, Di Beichen still managed to find out a lot of information. He felt that as long as Lan Jingquang's faction was expelled, the Lan clan would be different from before. Beichen, I feel that this matter should be decided by my father. My target is only Lan Qingyin. Bailey Hongzhuang's deep eyes blossomed with a dazzling brilliance. Her voice was cold and resolute. The conflict between the elders should be resolved by the elders. That year, Lan Jingquang and Yu Manlan were not her parents' opponents. Therefore, they could only use such underhanded methods to obtain victory. Now her parents were on the road to revenge. All these grudges should be resolved by their own hands. As for her as a junior, the thing she wanted to take back was on Lan Qingyin's body. This woman stole her rainbow pearl and lived arrogantly for so many years. Today, she wanted to take back everything from Lan Qingyin's hands with her own hands. She could imagine Lan Qingyin's arrogant appearance in front of her parents all these years. Not only did she not feel the slightest bit of guilt for taking away her sister's things, on the contrary, she felt that all of this was how it should be. For this kind of inhumane sister, Bailey Hongzhuang could only use her strength to teach her what was called human nature. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. His gaze gradually became gentle. You're right. Along the way, Bailey Hongzhuang had done enough. Now that Lan Yunxiao, Mu Lingbing, and Mu Jintz had all recovered, they could personally resolve the grudges between the elders. As for Bailey Hongzhuang, she could finally put down some of the burden on her shoulders. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and smiled. The morning sun shone on the two of them, plating them with a layer of illusory brilliance. The two of them held each other's hands tightly. Time passed peacefully. When the Bailey Hongzhuang duo arrived at Blue Sun City, they saw Mo Yunjue as expected. Mo Yunjue, as the young lord of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, always had the feeling that he was in control, as if everything was within his expectations. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen entered Blue Sun City, Mo Yunjue's people came to pick them up. Because there were still a few days before the Divine Ice Pond opened, they temporarily stayed in Blue Sun City and did not directly go to the Lan family. Although that was the case, no matter if it was Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, or Mo Yunjue, their temperaments were not ordinary people. Thus, when they entered Blue Sun City, they attracted the attention of many people. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were very free and easy. This time they came to Blue Sun City openly. Unlike when they went to Yutian City, they did not need to hide anything. Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, you're here. Chapter 2643. Yunjue, you're early. Bailey Hongzhuang's face bloomed with an elegant smile. In order to avoid missing the date, they had specially come a few days earlier. Who would have thought that Mo Yunjue would be even earlier than them? I'm only early by 2 days. Mo Yunjue chuckled, then gave a thumbs up. I've already heard. The commotion you've caused this time is really big. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. Naturally, they knew what Mo Yunjue was talking about. I'm only here to accompany the guest. This is all Hongzhuang's doing. Di Beichen raised his handsome eyebrows. As her husband, he had achieved very little in this matter. Everything had been planned by Bailey Hongzhuang. Mo Yunjue's sharp and cold face curved into a smile. Di Beichen, if you continue like this, I'm afraid you'll fall behind Hongzhuang. They had all seen Bailey Hongzhuang's improvement over the years. In fact, even at their level, they couldn't help but gasp in admiration after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's improvement. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't been unable to cultivate because her dantian had been destroyed, Bailey Hongzhuang would probably be the #1 person among the younger generation in the Shangxian continent. Hearing Mo Yunjue's teasing, Di Beichen shrugged indifferently, looking as if he didn't care. In the future, I'll rely on my wife to protect me. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. It was really rare to see this side of Di Beichen. Mo Yunjue didn't seem to expect Di Beichen to have such a reaction. At first he was stunned, then he smiled helplessly. Who asked him to not have a wife? Right now the Yu clan is in Blue Sun City and is very close to the Lan clan. In order to cure Lan Qingyin's poison, Yu Xiqing had always stayed in the Lan clan. Once your real identity is exposed, I'm afraid that the Yu clan will not let you off easily. Are you guys ready? Mo Yunjue's expression was unfathomable. During this period of time, he had already understood the situation clearly. If only Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen came here alone, it would be very risky. Even if it's a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, we still have to go. Moreover, this Yu clan was slaughtered by Hongzhuang like stray dogs. Di Beichen's expression was relaxed, without the slightest bit of nervousness in the face of a great enemy. On the contrary, it was filled with a poetic feeling as if he was on a scenic tour. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly without saying anything. At that time it was too difficult for her to fight against the entire Lan clan and Yu clan by herself. But now she was no longer the isolated and helpless young girl who could only rely on herself. Her background was enough to contend against them. It seems that you are full of confidence. Mo Yunjue nodded and muttered to himself. Although he did not know what Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were planning, it was fine as long as they came prepared. After preparing for so long, we have finally come to the Lan clan. Naturally, we are mentally prepared. Yunjue, thank you for always helping me. Bailey Hongzhuang's bright eyes were filled with heartfelt gratitude. Even during this period of time, Mo Yunjue was still helping her to face the Yu clan's investigation. I'm not helping for free, I want to be rewarded. Mo Yunjue's brows revealed a trace of freedom. His ink-black eyes faintly revealed some reluctance and complexity. Now that things had come to this, he had to admit that he had lost to Di Beichen in terms of feelings. Chapter 2644. Reward. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, a bit puzzled. Didn't you say you were going to teach me the art of disguise? Mo Yunjue laughed. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. Don't worry, we were in too much of a hurry when we met before. Since we have time now, I'll teach you the art of disguise. She only mastered this disguise technique occasionally. However, for an organization like Shirtian Pavilion, a good disguise technique was too important for them. Next, Bailey Hongzhuang taught Mo Yunjue the art of disguise. Mo Yunjue originally knew the art of disguise from Shangxian continent, but after experiencing Bailey Hongzhuang's art of disguise, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. It was much better than theirs. As long as one wasn't an expert in disguise, they wouldn't be able to see through this disguise. With Mo Yunjue's talent, he learned very quickly. With Bailey Hongzhuang's teaching, he naturally got the hang of it. During this process, Di Beichen, the wife-protecting demon, naturally stayed at the side and learned a thing or two. With his wife's playful personality, she would often make him look so ugly that even she couldn't bear to look at him. During this process, Mo Yunjue also told Bailey Hongzhuang all the news that he recently learned. Because the poison in Lan Qingyan's body hasn't been cured for a long time, Lan Jingquang's power in the Lan clan has declined. However, Lan Qingyan is still alive, and Lan Jingquang has the support of the elders so he can still hold on for the time being. Once Lan Qingyan dies, it would be useless for Lan Jingquang to hold on. Therefore, they have placed all their hopes on Yu Siqing. Only if Yu Siqing succeeds in curing the poison will their situation improve. This is not only what Lan Jingquang is looking forward to, but also what the Yu clan is looking forward to. Mo Yunjue shifted his gaze, only to see Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth was like a pill, her skin as delicate as porcelain, revealing a kind of shocking beauty. He could not help but admire her. It was no wonder that Bailey Hongzhuang was able to cure his poison. Even Yu Siqing, who was known as the #1 doctor in the Shangxian continent, was no match for Bailey Hongzhuang. She was truly amazing. Now that you have arrived in Blue Sun City, I'm afraid the Lan family has already heard of your arrival. I'm afraid they will come looking for you very soon. Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen mockingly. Once they entered the Lan family's sphere of influence, trouble came one after another. Lan Qingyan was the most outstanding disciple of the Lan clan in this generation. The divine pond of ice snow was about to open. If Lan Qingyan missed this opportunity, she would have to wait for another one. This was definitely not something the Lan family wanted to see. Once she waited for another 3 years, it would be very difficult for Lan Qingyan to catch up to her original progress. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly, her ink-black phoenix eyes revealed understanding and wisdom. They probably won't come looking for me because the poison should be cured today. Yu Siqing can cure the poison today? Mo Yunjue was a little puzzled. If Bailey Hongzhuang could even predict when Yu Siqing would be cured, this was a little scary. No. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. The poison I gave Lan Qingyan has a time limit. Now that the time is up, her poison will naturally be cured. As soon as this was said, Mo Yunjue also understood. Chapter 2645. Lan Jingquang was in a terrible fix recently. No matter how hard Yu Siqing tried to detoxify Lan Qingyan's condition did not improve. As Yu Siqing spent more time, the suspicions of the Lan clan towards Yu Siqing deepened. No matter what, Yu Siqing was known as the #1 in the art of medicine and poison. Who would have thought that she would not be able to detoxify Lan Qingyan after spending 3 months? The Yu clan was already in decline. After this situation, the people of Blue Sun City looked down on the Yu clan even more. 3 months were almost up. The divine pond of ice and snow was about to open. However, Lan Qingyan's condition did not improve. They would have to give up this golden opportunity. Thinking of this, Lan Jingquang felt an inexplicable sense of irritation. He had carefully planned for so many years. He did not expect that it would be ruined because of a battle for supremacy. Once Lan Qingyan missed this opportunity, it would be difficult for the other disciples of the Lan clan to catch up even if Lan Qingyan survived the divine pond of ice and snow. In other words, their original power could be said to be gone forever. One careless move and the whole game was lost. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had come to Blue Sun City, Lan Jingquang's eyes lit up. He quickly sent people to find Bailey Hongzhuang. Yu Xiqing spent so much time and still could not detoxify it. Obviously, there was no way to successfully detoxify it. Since this poison was administered by Bailey Hongzhuang must have a way to detoxify it. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang was in Limitless Palace. Even if they wanted to ask for it, they would not be able to get a good result. However, now that Bailey Hongzhuang was in their Lan clan sphere of influence, this situation would be much easier to solve. If Bailey Hongzhuang was not willing to give up the antidote, then their Lan clan could only use violence. No matter what, he could not let his years of planning go to waste. Immediately go to the clan and invite Bailey Hongzhuang to the clan. Lan Jingquang's eyes flashed with malice. He was filled with disgust and hatred towards this Bailey Hongzhuang, whom he had never met before. If it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang, he wouldn't have been in such a terrible state for the past 3 months. Other than when Lan Yunxiao was with him, he hadn't felt this feeling for many years. Yes, when the Lan family's second elder and the others found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had arrived in Blue Sun City, smiles appeared on their faces. No matter what, at least Lan Qingyan had persevered until now. As long as the antidote arrived, Lan Qingyan would be able to recover quickly. After all, the Lan family also had a lot of natural treasures. As long as Lan Qingyan could participate in the divine pond of ice and snow this time, then all of these effects would not matter. Even though the Lan family had many outstanding disciples, as long as Lan Qingyan did not die, she would still be the most outstanding person. No one could compare to her. However, just as Lan Jingquang was sending people to invite Bailey Hongzhuang, news suddenly came from Yu Xiqing's residence. Master Quang, Great Master Yu Xiqing just sent news. She has successfully detoxified the poison in Lan Qingyan's body. Now, Lan Qingyan's injuries have already begun to recover. Hearing this news, Lan Jingquang was slightly stunned. Then a trace of ecstasy appeared in his eyes. Is this true? Chapter 2646. Previously, when they knew that Lan Qingyan had lost an arm, the Lan family had already prepared the medicinal herbs for her. However, later on, the situation was not suitable for treatment and this matter had been delayed. However, the medicinal herbs had always been placed in Yu Xiqing's residence. Once Yu Xiqing successfully detoxified the poison, she would immediately treat Lan Qingyan. Lan Jingquang instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Originally, he was worried that using forceful means on Bailey Hongzhuang might cause some trouble. However, compared to the greater loss, this was already the best method. He did not expect that Yu Xiqing would be able to detoxify Lan Qingyan at this crucial moment. This really solved a huge problem for him. It seemed that the heavens did not want him to die. Although the process of these 3 months was very torturous, as long as Lan Qingyan could recover, then all the problems could be easily solved. Thinking of the vexation he had suffered in these 3 months, Lan Jingquang's gaze became increasingly gloomy and cold. After Lan Qingyan had truly recovered, he would let those disloyal people taste the consequences of betrayal. Come, let's go and take a look. Lan Jingquang immediately stood up and walked towards Yu Xiqing's residence. The second elder and the others were also overjoyed. Their original nervousness and worry had already disappeared, and it was replaced by a kind of pleasure of taking revenge. After nearly 3 months of torture, Lan Qingyin's entire body was on the verge of death. She felt that she was not far from death. However, when she woke up from her coma today, she suddenly felt that the pain that accompanied her for nearly 3 months had suddenly disappeared. This feeling was too nostalgic, and she even suspected that she was hallucinating. However, after she told Yu Xiqing about her feelings, Yu Xiqing took her pulse and told her that the poison in her body had been completely removed. Hearing Yu Xiqing's words, Lan Qingyin only felt that it was inconceivable. She was almost certain that she was going to die. She did not expect that there would be a sudden turn of events. However, the feeling in her body was indeed there. She asked Yu Xiqing many times, and Yu Xiqing gave her such a definite answer. She suddenly felt as if she had risen from hell to heaven. In reality, it was not only Lan Qingyin who had this feeling. Yu Xiqing also had the same feeling. During this period of time, as she was at her wit's end, she could feel that the Lan family's attitude towards her was getting colder and colder. It was obvious that they no longer took her seriously. She, who had always been looked up to by others, could not stand being looked down upon by others. However, the poison was too strong, and she could not break it no matter how hard she tried. However, what she didn't expect was that Lan Qingyin's poison would suddenly disappear today. It had completely disappeared. After discovering this, Yu Xiqing immediately realized that this was an opportunity. Under such torment, Lan Qingyin was already muddle-headed. She had no idea what was going on. She would take all the credit for this and no one would know. Once she spread the news of the antidote, she would become a hero of the Lan family. As a result, the Lan clan no longer dared to look down on him. On the contrary, she would become an honored guest of the Lan family and Lan Qingyin's savior. Lan Qingyin was the young mistress of the Lan family. With such an identity, she did not need to worry about the following situation. Chapter 2647. When Lan Jingquang arrived, he saw that Lan Qingyin's pale face had recovered a bit, and her spirit was much better. Seeing this, Lan Jingquang's eyes couldn't help but be filled with joy. "Qingyin, how do you feel?" Lan Qingyin's mood was naturally very good. This feeling of living from the brink of death was difficult to move. Her face revealed a joyful smile. "Father, I'm very good. Thanks to Grandaunt for saving me." Although she didn't know much about medicine, the pain in her body had indeed disappeared. After recovering from the pain that was enough to torture a person to death, Lan Qingyin only felt that every minute and every second was exceptionally comfortable. Lan Jingquang's face was full of smiles. He then turned to look at Yu Xiqing. "Aunt, it's been hard on you. Thank you for saving Qingyin's life." These days, because Yu Xiqing hadn't made any progress in curing Lan Qingyin's poison, Lan Jingquang couldn't help but have some opinions in his heart. Originally, Lan Jingquang had always been very respectful towards Yu Xiqing. However, after the incident in the Yu clan, Lan Jingquang's thoughts had changed. After all, Yu Xiqing had always been known as the #1 in medicine and poison for so many years. He didn't expect that when the Yu clan was in trouble, Yu Xiqing would be helpless. It was as if she was useless in an instant. Lan Qingyin had been poisoned for so long. Yu Xiqing had always been thinking of ways to cure the poison, but there was no progress. This made him wonder if Yu Xiqing's previous reputation was just flattery. Otherwise, the other party just casually poisoned her, and it was already difficult for Yu Xiqing to be in such a difficult situation. When he thought of all the requests that Yu Xiqing made of him, the dissatisfaction in his heart became even stronger. Fortunately, after so long, he finally succeeded in curing the poison. Looking at Lan Jingquang's face full of smiles, Yu Xiqing couldn't help but feel a trace of disdain and disgust. These days, she saw the change in Lan Jingquang's attitude towards her. If she didn't say that she cured Lan Qingyin's poison, she was afraid that in the following days, she really wouldn't have any status in the Lan clan. Fortunately, there was always a way out. Although she didn't know why Lan Qingyin's poison dissipated, as long as it dissipated, it was enough. "You're too polite. Curing Qingyin's poison is my duty," Yu Xiqing said with a smile. Her sincere appearance did not reveal the disgust in her heart. Aunt, I'll have to trouble you to help Qingyan recover as soon as possible. The ice snow divine altar is about to open. Yu Siqing nodded and said, Don't worry, leave this matter to me. With so many heavenly treasures, it's very easy to let Qingyan recover as soon as possible. After receiving Yu Siqing's confirmation, Lan Jingquang let out a sigh of relief. He felt like he could finally put down the stone that had been weighing on his heart for so many days. Next, he would be able to answer to the elders. As for those who had become disloyal during these days, he could start dealing with them. Lan Qingyan's face was full of smiles, but the ruthlessness in her eyes became more intense. The reason why he had suffered so much was all because of that bitch Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2648. After the Battle of Zhualu, she already hated Bailey Hongzhuang to the extreme. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would almost take her life. This time Bailey Hongzhuang was here. She must make sure that Bailey Hongzhuang would never return. The news of Lan Qingyan's detoxification quickly spread throughout the Lan family. This news was no different from a heavy bomb, shocking everyone in the Lan family. In fact, the poison in Lan Qingyan's body had not been detoxified for so long. Almost everyone was certain that Lan Qingyan would die without a doubt. Many of the younger disciples of the Lan family even wondered if the opportunity to enter the divine ice pond would fall on them. Unexpectedly, just a few days before the divine ice pond opened, Lan Qingyan was detoxified. For a moment, Lan Jingquang's people were extremely happy, while the other group was deeply worried. Once Lan Qingyan's injuries were healed, the situation would return to how it was before. Winner takes all. They could almost imagine the outcome. The Lan family's patriarch Lan Hongtai also knew of this news. He didn't feel much about it because his heart was now on Bailey Hongzhuang, who had already arrived in Blue Sun City. He wanted to see Bailey Hongzhuang with his own eyes. However, the current situation between the Lan family and Bailey Hongzhuang was very sensitive. One must know that the reason why Lan Qingyan was in such a situation was all because of Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't intend to alert the enemy. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang entered the Lan family, then he would definitely have the opportunity to see her. Mo Yunjue was indeed a genius. When learning the art of disguise, he could be said to be able to grasp it with just a little bit. After Bailey Hongzhuang taught Mo Yunjue some of the key techniques, Mo Yunjue was able to master it very quickly. At this moment, a series of knocks sounded outside the house. Following that, a man in a black robe walked into the house. He looked as if he had something to report to Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue nodded slightly and gave a look, indicating that he didn't need to care about Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Only then did the man slowly speak. Young master, the Lan family just released news that Yu Siqing has successfully detoxified Lan Qingyan. When this news came out, Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. The situation was really as Bailey Hongzhuang said. Lan Qingyan's poisons was detoxified today. But this should be the detoxification was done by Yu Siqing. Got it. You can leave now. Report back if you have any news. Mo Yunjue waved his hand, and the man in black walked out of the house. Di Beichen's lips curled into a slight smile, and his expression was somewhat mocking. Looks like this Yu Siqing is also at her wit's end. In order to improve her situation, she actually took all the credit for herself. I'm afraid that Lan Jingquang and the rest are now endlessly grateful to Yu Siqing. If they know that all this wasn't Yu Siqing's doing, their expressions. I'm really looking forward to it. Mo Yunjue chuckled. Yu Siqing thought that no one else would know about this, but as the instigators, they couldn't be clearer about this matter. Yu Siqing hasn't been able to detoxify my poison for so long. I'm afraid that her situation in the Lan family isn't very good. For her to do this now, although it's somewhat shameless, it's understandable. Chapter 2649. Yu Siqing would never have imagined that she would fall into such a situation one day. However, this was nothing now. Once Yu Siqing finds out who she really was, she would feel even worse. There's no hurry, the truth will not be buried just like that. Let Yu Siqing be smug for now. The corners of Di Beichen's lips curled upwards and there was a hint of ridicule in his smile. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. The situation would only get more and more interesting. At night, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were cultivating in their room when two figures suddenly appeared soundlessly in front of them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mu Qinghan immediately withdrew from their cultivation and looked at the two exceptionally familiar figures in front of them. Joyful smiles appeared on their faces. Grandfather, grandmother. Bailey Hongzhuang rose to her feet. Ever since she had left Sun Moon Palace, she had not seen Si Tian and Mu Jins. Now that she had seen the two of them again, she could not help but feel excited. She had heard from her parents that the relationship between Si Tian and Mu Jins had been mended a lot. Although there were still some affectionate feelings, it was only a matter of time. Master, mistress. Di Beichen bowed respectfully and a joyful smile appeared on his incomparably handsome face. Ever since his master had found his mistress, he had completely become a hands-off shopkeeper and no longer paid any attention to the matters of Tiangang sect. However, now that he had seen his master and mistress together, he was genuinely happy. He had lived with his master since he was a child and understood his master's situation very well. After so many years, he had never seen his master in such high spirits. This feeling was as if he had found his life's goal. In the past, he had never seen his master so happy. Perhaps from the day his master had found his mistress, he had finally begun to live the life he truly wanted. Si Tuyen and Mu Jin sized up the talented and beautiful couple Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang before them. Their eyes flickered with relief and kindness. Looks like you've improved a lot during this period of time. With Si Tuyen's cultivation, he could naturally see the current strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen at a glance. Compared to before they had participated in the Battle of Zhualu, their strength had increased tremendously. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen smiled. The Battle of Zhualu was truly a good place. Especially the Primal Chaos Tablet, it helped them raise their cultivation by quite a bit. If they hadn't participated in the Battle of Zhualu, there would still be a large gap between them. I've already heard about the Battle of Zhualu. To be able to achieve such good results, Yixuan, we're really overjoyed. Mu Jinsei's face was filled with joy and excitement. When she had found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's achievements, she had felt an indescribable sense of pride. This feeling made her happier than when she had achieved good results. Grandma, I was just lucky. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Speaking of her experience in the Battle of Zhualu, no one knew whether it was good luck or bad luck. If they hadn't been unlucky enough to walk on the most difficult path, then she wouldn't have been so lucky to obtain such a huge increase in strength. It could only be said that everything was predestined. Chapter 2650. Bailey Hongzhuang was still young, but she was able to reach this step with her own ability. Just this point alone made her stronger than everyone present. At least, Mu Jins was ashamed of her inferiority. Beichen, you have to work harder. Hongzhuang is getting more and more powerful now. Si Tian patted Di Beichen's shoulder with an extremely kind expression. He had watched Di Beichen grow up since he was a child, so he knew his character very well. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were together, there was still a big gap between them. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained the Rainbow Pearl, her talent had been completely revealed, and the gap between the two was gradually shrinking. If Di Beichen didn't work harder, and Bailey Hongzhuang caught up to him in the future, then the situation would be different. Of course, in Si Tuyen's opinion, there was nothing wrong with living off a woman. Di Beichen nodded and said with a smile, Master, I will work hard. Looking at Di Beichen's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Today was the second time someone had said such words to Di Beichen. It seemed that the increase in her strength was really a bit dangerous for Di Beichen. However, she also knew in her heart that this was because Di Beichen's physique hadn't changed yet. Once Di Baichen's physique changed, then his cultivation speed would greatly increase. After they settled the Lan family's matter, they would put all their focus on changing Di Baichen's physique. Otherwise, if they continued to delay like this, it wouldn't be good for Di Baichen's body. During this period of time, the situation had gradually begun to appear, but Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were able to successfully suppress it, so there weren't any problems now. Yixuan, I heard that Lan Qingyin's poison has been cured. Once you don't have this weakness, I'm afraid that when you go to the Lan family, they will start to question you. What do you plan to do next? Mu Jinsei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had recognized her, Bailey Hongzhuang's actions had never made them worry. However, this time, Bailey Hongzhuang had poisoned Lan Qingyin so viciously. Once Lan Qingyin recovered, she would definitely not let this matter rest. If they directly fell out with the Lan family, it would be fine. But according to their understanding, Bailey Hongzhuang planned to enter the Divine Ice Lake first. If that was the case, the situation would be a little troublesome. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, with confidence and indifference between her eyebrows. Now that I'm the Sun Moon Palace's young palace master, I believe that the Lan family won't dare to do anything to me. The Battle of Zhualu has never prohibited the use of poison. What's more, I only poisoned Lan Qingyin and took her life. If the Lan family were to kill me because of this, it would be too much. Bailey Hongzhuang was the head of an aristocratic family in her previous life, so she was very clear about some of the things that aristocratic families paid attention to. No matter what, this participation in the Divine Ice Lake was a promise that the Lan family had previously made. If the Lan family didn't fulfill this promise, it would be a huge blow to the Lan family's reputation. Originally, the Battle of Zhualu this time had already weakened the Lan family's reputation. If this unfavorable news were to spread, then the Lan family's influence would be even worse. Chapter 2651. They were the ones who suggested the divine pond of ice and snow as a reward. They won't slap their own face on this point. Even if they want to settle the score, they'll have to wait until we leave the divine pond of ice and snow. However, once we leave the divine pond of ice and snow, there's no need to continue hiding. Di Baichen quickly said. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's words, Si Tuyen and Mu Jinsei looked at each other. It seemed that these two brats had already calculated everything. It's better to be safe than sorry. Si Tuyen's voice deepened. Lan Jingquang isn't a soft-hearted person. This time he's in a terrible fix. I'm afraid he won't let you off so easily. Now, whether it was Si Tuyen or Mu Jinsei, they were both on guard against the Lan and Yu clans. This was because, from the things that had happened these past few years, they clearly knew that both the Lan and Yu clans were not good people. Grandfather and grandmother are already here, aren't they? With you here, we don't have to be afraid of anything. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was full of smiles. The Yu clan was no longer the same as before. To let the Lan clan offend Tiangang sect and Sun Moon Palace, they probably didn't have the guts to do so. However, once Mu Jinsei appeared, Yu Xiqing would probably be completely dumbfounded. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's cute and playful appearance, Mu Jinsei couldn't help but reach out and pat Bailey Hongzhuang's head. You little brat, you've really calculated everything. That's natural. If I didn't have a foolproof plan, I wouldn't have dared to set foot here. If she hadn't prepared everything, how would she have dared to set foot in this place that meant so much to her? This was the place she had secretly decided to come to when she found out about her past. Back then, she had suffered great humiliation here. Now that she was here again, she definitely wouldn't allow anything unexpected to happen here. What she wanted was to stand in front of the Lan clan in a completely domineering manner. She wanted to let everyone in the Lan clan know how foolish their decision was back then. Even if she lost the Rainbow God Pearl, she still couldn't be compared to trash like Lan Qingyin. Similarly, her father was not someone a despicable person like Lan Jingquang could compare to. As for her mother, she wasn't someone that a vicious and merciless woman like Yu Manlan could compare to. In the end, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others came to an agreement. First, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen would head to the Lan family. Mu Jinsi and Si Tian would keep an eye on the Lan family's situation. If anything went wrong, they would immediately appear. In this way, this was already a foolproof plan, and there was no need to worry about any other risks. Even if it was only Si Tuyen and Mu Jinsei who came alone and did not bring anyone from their forces, there was still no need to worry. Grandmother, this time when I went to the Yu clan, I specially prepared a gift for you. Her beautiful eyes, which were as black as ink, flickered with a dazzling light. She believed that her grandfather and grandmother were still unaware of this. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mu Jin stared blankly for a moment before asking, "What gift?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Yu Siqing had used such a vicious poison on you, causing you to suffer for so many years. This time, I've improved the poison and used it on Yu Siqing's body. Chapter 2652. As Yu Siqing's old friends, they understood her cautiousness very well. It was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to even get close to Yu Siqing, not to mention poisoning her without anyone noticing. They had been in Blue Sun City for a while, and had a certain understanding of the Lan and Yu family. After knowing that the Yu family had suffered such a huge blow because of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's actions, the two of them couldn't help but gasp in surprise. However, they had never heard of the news of Yu Siqing being poisoned. On the contrary, there had been rumors of Yu Siqing helping Lan Qingyan to cure her poison. If Yu Siqing had really been poisoned, she shouldn't be so relaxed right now and still have the leisure to help others cure their poison. However, they naturally wouldn't doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words. It seemed that there were still many things that they weren't clear about. "Hongzhuang, how did you poison Yu Siqing? Didn't she notice?" Si Tuyen felt that it was a little inconceivable. Yu Siqing was a vicious and merciless woman, so she was extremely guarded against others. All these years, in order to find out about Mu Jin's whereabouts, he had tried to threaten Yu Siqing. However, this woman had always taken all the unfavorable factors into account, leaving him helpless. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was actually able to poison Yu Siqing successfully. From the looks of it, Yu Siqing hadn't noticed until now. This wasn't an ordinary feat. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. Poisoning Yu Siqing was indeed an extremely difficult task. As her direct disciple, I had stayed by her side for a whole month before I found a chance to poison her. However, this goo poison isn't like ordinary poisons and needs a certain amount of time to take effect. This is the only way to bury the goo poison deeper. Judging from the current situation, it won't be long before the poison flares up. After knowing that Bailey Hongzhuang had become Yu Siqing's direct disciple, Si Tuyen and Mu Jinsi couldn't help but be stunned. Previously, they had only roughly understood that the Yu family had fallen into such a situation. However, they didn't understand the process at all. They didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually become Yu Siqing's direct disciple. This was really out of their expectations. It seemed that when Bailey Hongzhuang had gone to the Yu family, the things that had happened weren't ordinary. If Yu Siqing knew that her direct disciple had poisoned her, who knew what kind of expression she would have? "Ishwan, is the goo poison you gave Yu Siqing the same as the goo poison I was inflicted with before?" Mu Jinsi couldn't help but ask. When she thought about how this parasite had tortured her for so many years, she felt her hair stand on end. The effects of the goo poison were too terrifying. She had been tortured for years to the point that she almost wanted to end her own life. Fortunately, she had persevered. "Ishwan Ishwan's Yaixuan, Ishwan Ishwan, Ishwan, Ishwan and then, Ishwan, Ishwan. The goo worm is still the same one as before, but I added a little something." Chapter 2653. The effect of this goo poison is very similar to the one from back then, but it's much more powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black eyes flashed with a bright luster. Since she wanted to return everything to Yu Xiqing, it was naturally impossible for it to be the same as back then. She had to make Yu Xiqing suffer more. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Mu Jins and Sita Yin glanced at each other. Their granddaughter was really not an ordinary kind of person. If Yu Xiqing knew about this, she would definitely regret everything she had done. I'll wait and see. Mu Jins smiled. Mu Jins did not have the slightest bit of sympathy for someone like Mu Jins, who had done many evil deeds. Once Yu Xiqing fell into her hands, she would definitely let her have a good taste of what was called pain. However, her granddaughter's methods were obviously more than hers. Giving her a taste of her own medicine was the best. In the next 2 days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest lived peacefully in Blue Sun City. However, they were still keenly aware that many people from the Lan family were watching their every move. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two generously let the other party see. At least before entering the Divine Ice Snow Pond, they did not have any plans. As for Si Tian and Mu Jins, they had already completely disappeared from everyone's sight. With their strength, as long as they wanted to hide, the Lan family would not be able to discover them. Ever since Lan Qingyan had been cured of the poison, her original arrogance had returned. During this period, although she had been lying in bed, she still understood what had happened from the mouths of Yu Manlan and the rest. In the past, she did not know that so many people wanted her to fall so that they could obtain her resources. This point caused Lan Qingyan's heart to be filled with intense anger. These bastards! She must quickly recover and not let them have the chance to take advantage of her. After this period of experience, Lan Qingyan felt that she had grown again. In the past, her life had been smooth sailing and she had not experienced any great storms. She thought that everything was so easy. However, after Lan Jingquang taught her a lesson, she realized that things were not as simple as they seemed. The reason why her life had been so smooth all these years was because Lan Jingquang had been helping her with everything. Lan Qingyan felt that she was not ruthless enough in the past. If she was ruthless enough like her father, once she made a move, she would not have fallen into such a situation. This time, after entering the divine pond of ice and snow, she would first take Bailey Hongzhuang's life. Then, she would make those fellows in the family unable to have any other thoughts. The future head of the Lan family could only be her. When Lan Jingquang saw the change in Lan Qingyan's attitude, his face revealed a joyful smile. Fortunately, this daughter of his, Lan Qingyan, was not as useless as Yu Manlan. In fact, she was more like him. As long as Lan Qingyan pulled herself together, the Lan family would definitely be theirs. Father, that Bailey Hongzhuang is very strange. She is extremely strong when it comes to fighting above her level. It had been 3 months since the Battle of Zhuolu had ended. He wondered if she had improved in the past 3 months. Chapter 2654. Lan Qingyan looked at Lan Jingquang in front of her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with worry and viciousness. She wanted to personally deal with Bailey Hongzhuang, but she had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang's talent and cultivation wasn't bad. Thinking back to when her cultivation was 3 levels higher than Bailey Hongzhuang was only at a disadvantage, but she wasn't completely powerless. With the help of the Primal Chaos Tablet, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength increased by leaps and bounds. On the other hand, she was tricked by Bailey Hongzhuang, causing her to not make any progress in the past 3 months. With her current situation, once she met Bailey Hongzhuang, she would still lack confidence. Thus, she could only place her hopes on Lan Jingquang. The Lan family had stood tall in the Shangxian continent for so many years, so they must have some methods to increase their strength. She had heard of it before, but it was extremely precious and only the most important people in the family could have it. Although she didn't know what it was, she knew that it must be a treasure. If she could obtain this inheritance, she would be full of confidence when she faced Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing Lan Qingyan's words, Lan Jingquang's thin lips slightly pursed. His gloomy and handsome face revealed a complex and obscure expression. Seeing Lan Jingquang like this, Lan Qingyan's heart also felt a little apprehensive. Regarding her father's personality, she hadn't been able to figure it out for so many years. Almost every time she saw Lan Jingquang reveal such an expression, her heart couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Lan Jingquang kept staring at Lan Qingyan. After a while he slowly opened his mouth. The family does have a secret technique that can help you increase your cultivation, but the pain you have to endure is not small. Usually, only the head of the family has the opportunity to accept it. Although you are now the future head of the family, you are still not. Hearing this, Lan Qingyan couldn't help but frown. Her hands under her sleeves gradually clenched into fists. Although her right hand had recovered, she still remembered the pain of losing her arm clearly. The last time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she was a complete loser. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had arrived at Blue Sun City, she must have been constantly mocking her. She absolutely couldn't bear to see Bailey Hongzhuang again as a loser. Moreover, Di Beichen would also come this time. The Lan family was her home ground. How could she lose to an outsider? Father, I will be the head of the Lan family sooner or later. This matter you should have a way, right? Lan Qingyan abruptly raised her head. Her eyes flickered with a resolute bloodthirsty light. This time she absolutely cannot fail. No matter what, she must obtain this inheritance. Looking at Lan Qingyan's determined look, Lan Jingquang's eyes couldn't help but flash a trace of astonishment. In all these years, he had never seen Lan Qingyan with such a resolute appearance. After this incident, Qingyan's lands with her. He admired this ambition very much. Just like him, as long as he had his eyes on something, he must obtain it no matter what method he had to use. Now, he was somewhat grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for her, he didn't know when Lan Qingyan would be able to understand everything. Since this is something you must obtain as your father, I will naturally do my best to help you obtain it. Chapter 2655. That old man Lan Hongtai had been trying to control him all these years, thinking that it would be fine as long as he didn't hand over the family head position. However, Lan Jingquang's life wasn't something that old man Lan Hongtai could control. As long as the family head position fell on Lan Qingyan, so what if he wasn't the family head in name? In the entire Lan family, who would dare to disobey him? Now he wanted to put all his heart on Lan Qingyan and help her become the family head in one fell swoop. After receiving Lan Jingquang's answer, Lan Qingyan's face also revealed an excited and proud smile. Thank you, father. Lan Jingquang patted Lan Qingyan's shoulder. Don't worry, I will handle this matter. However, the pain of accepting the secret method is equally unbearable. If you can't bear it, then not only will you fail at the last step, your cultivation will also be weakened. You have to think about this carefully. Father, I have confidence. In these 3 months I have been suffering a pain worse than death. I think the pain of the secret method won't be worse than what I had to endure before. Speaking of which, I really have to thank Bailey Hongzhuang for all of this. Lan Qingyan's eyes rippled with a trace of mockery and ridicule, but she still gritted her teeth and said these words. Although the pain had been relieved, the impression was still too deep. It was to the extent that she would often think of it in her dreams at night, waking her up with a start. Lan Jingquang saw a deep hatred in Lan Qingyan's eyes. It was just like him more than 20 years ago, so familiar and so ambitious. Since you are so confident, then I can rest assured. Wait here for my news, I will be there as soon as possible. Lan Jingquang looked at Lan Qingyan with a face full of smiles. After saying this, he strode out of Lan Qingyan's room. The divine ice snow pond would open in 2 days. They must hurry up. If they were a step slower, it would all be too late. However, after Lan Jingquang left, Lan Qingyan stared blankly at Lan Jingquang's departing figure. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, wondering if she had seen wrongly. After so many years, this was the first time she saw a ray of affection in Lan Jingquang's eyes. However, she clearly remembered that gaze just now. She couldn't have been wrong. After a momentary daze, Lan Qingyan's lips suddenly bloomed into a smile. She suddenly understood why her father didn't like her mother enough all these years, just like how he didn't like her always complaining to her mother. This was the real reason. Night fell and a cool breeze blew. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Mo Yunjue gathered together once again. Now that the Lan family had completely treated them as a group, there was no need for them to hide. I just received a piece of news. Mo Yunjua took a sip of tea and said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's gazes fell on Mo Yunjua. The Shirtian Pavilion's ability was indeed well-deserved. Their informants were spread all over the Shangxian continent. Even though they were being watched closely by the Lan family, Mo Yunjua's news had never been cut off. If he offended such an enemy, it would be impossible to guard against. Lan Qingyan seems to have some sort of operation tonight. Lan Jingquang, Lan Kaicheng, and the others all went to her residence. Chapter 2656. You don't know what's going on? Di Beichen raised his eyebrows. Lan Qingyan's sudden movement when the divine pond of ice and snow was about to open was obviously not a good thing. Mo Yunjua shook his head. This matter was originally carried out behind the Lan clan's back. It's already good that I know about this. As for what's going on, other than Lan Jingquang's core members, I'm afraid no one else knows about it. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both fell into silence. They were going to the Lan clan tomorrow, but Lan Qingyan suddenly made a move tonight. No matter how they looked at it, it didn't seem like she came with good intentions. However, they didn't know what kind of tricks Lan Qingyan would play. We and Lan Qingyan are rivals. It's expected that she would try all sorts of methods to deal with us. According to my guess, Lan Qingyan might want to take advantage of tonight to increase her cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slightly curved. That elegant and refined face didn't reveal any worry. On the contrary, it was still indifferent and relaxed. With the experience of her previous life, she had some understanding of the methods that aristocratic families had. These methods were even inferior to those of 1,000 years ago. Forcefully increasing one's cultivation was also a method that aristocratic families would use at certain times. However, each family's method was different. The effects and side effects were also different. Although she wasn't sure if her guess was correct, but at this time this was the most likely possibility. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjua couldn't help but look at each other. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. If that's really the case, then the Lan clan has really put in a lot of effort this time. Mo Yunjua's eyes suddenly darkened. He had heard of this kind of method to suddenly increase one's cultivation. However, the side effects were usually very big, so it wasn't used lightly. However, Lan Qingyan was the future head of the Lan clan. Naturally, the Lan clan wouldn't ruin Lan Qingyan's future because of her personal feelings. Therefore, there was only one possibility. The side effects were very small. This kind of secret technique was usually extremely precious and could not be used easily. The Lan family must have paid a huge price for it. Lan Qingyan is the young lord of the Lan family. It is not strange that the Lan family is willing to pay the price for her. Di Beichen's deep, dark eyes were clouded with haze. Originally, all this situation was within their expectations. They didn't expect such a thing to happen now. That could be a little complicated. Of course, how much Lan Qingyan's strength had increased was not what he cared about the most. What he cared more about was that everything Lan Qingyan was using now should belong to Bailey Hongzhuang. Compared to the gloomy expressions of Mo Yunjua and Di Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Lan Qingyan is now desperate. It seems that she also sees me as a very strong opponent. In order to defeat me, she has already used everything she has. Compared to the situation where Lan Qingyan had always looked down on her, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that she was more willing to see Lan Qingyan's current expression as if she was facing a great enemy. Even if Lan Qingyan used everything she had and used all the resources she could, in the end she was still defeated by her. That kind of blow was the biggest and most difficult to bear. Oh. Chapter 2657. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two walked to the front of the Lan family's gate, the Lan family obviously knew that they were coming. Therefore, Great Elder Lan Borong was already waiting for them. When Lan Borong saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two, a joyful smile appeared on his face. Young Palace Master Bailey, young Sect Master D, young Tower Master Mo, welcome. When they saw Lan Borong again, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were not unfamiliar with him. As the great elder of the Lan family, Lan Borong usually handled many of the Lan family's matters. Moreover, they had seen Lan Borong with their own eyes during the Battle of Zhuolu last time. Elder Lan, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two smiled. When Lan Borong saw Bailey Hongzhuang's familiar face, his eyes could not help but fluctuate a little. It had to be said that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two looked too similar. At this moment when he looked carefully, it was as if the two of them had merged together. Although there were some fluctuations in his heart, Lan Borong did not show it. He smiled and said, "The three of you please follow me. We have already arranged accommodations for the three of you, and prepared a banquet to welcome the three of you." Although Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were young, their identities could not be ignored. Tiangang Sect, Shitian Tower and Wuji Palace. Once these three major forces joined forces, the entire Shangxian continent would tremble a little. Therefore, Lan Borong was very polite and did not dare to treat Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two as his juniors. Thank you, thank you." Lan Borong led Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two slowly to their accommodation. Along the way, he also introduced the environment and situation of the Lan family. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at every corner of the Lan family. It was so unfamiliar. In the past, her parents lived here. Originally, this should be an environment that she was very familiar with. However, in fact, she only felt an indescribable strangeness to this place. While they were walking, the disciples of the Lan family were also curiously sizing up Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. So this girl is Bailey Hongzhuang. She looks even younger than Lan Qingyan. I didn't expect her to be able to defeat Lan Qingyan. This is too unbelievable. Don't belittle yourself. If it weren't for Di Beichen and Mo Yunjua's help, Bailey Hongzhuang definitely wouldn't be a match for our young master. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang poisoned and asked for help. She's just a vixen. In terms of strength, our young master is miles ahead of her. In front of the clan, even if there were some who were dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang at this moment, all of that had dissipated. All that was left was the thick enmity towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Fortunately, Great Master Yu Siqing successfully cured the young master of the poison. Otherwise, Bailey Hongzhuang would really be showing off her strength. I didn't expect her to have a heart as venomous as a scorpion with such a pretty face. The disciples of the Lan family obviously hated Bailey Hongzhuang to the extreme. At this moment they didn't cover up their discussion at all and Bailey Hongzhuang heard it clearly. In fact, no one in the entire Lan family welcomed Bailey Hongzhuang's arrival. The news of Lan Qingyan being poisoned couldn't be concealed at all. Therefore, during this period of time, the power of the Lan family was also affected. After all, losing a young master was a huge loss. Wife. Chapter 2658. Bailey Hongzhuang met Di Beichen's deep eyes that were filled with concern. The corner of her lips curled up slightly, and her faint smile revealed indifference and peace. She shook her head without a trace, indicating that she was fine. This scene was within her expectations. Just like the resentment and indifference of the Lan family towards her, she similarly had no other feelings towards the Lan family. This was the place where her father grew up, but it was also the place where she almost lost her life. In her heart, perhaps even a foreign place could not be compared to it. Di Beichen's eyes revealed a hint of darkness. His displeased and cold gaze swept across the surroundings, and a ruthless and bone-chilling intent was instantly emitted. Looking at Di Beichen's gaze, the surrounding Lan family disciples, who were originally aggressive, only felt a chill run down their spines. It was as if they had fallen into an ice cellar, and even the words that were about to leave their mouth were forcefully suppressed. They no longer had the courage to speak. When they looked at Di Beichen again, there was a hint of fear in their hearts. Previously they did not take it seriously. Now that they saw Di Beichen's aura, they understood that the young lord of Tiangang sect was not someone to be trifled with. One look was enough to make people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. This was the difference between them. Naturally, Lan Borong also noticed this scene, and he could not help but feel a little emotional. As the young lord of Tiangang sect, Di Beichen had already made a name for himself a few years ago. Among the younger generation, Di Beichen was definitely one of the most dazzling people. Lan Qingyin's reputation among the aristocratic families was just like Di Beichen's reputation among the sections. Not to mention her strength, Di Beichen's temperament was still better. Most importantly, Di Beichen was really protective of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang had yet to make a move, but Di Beichen had already made his move. It seemed that the rumors were true. Di Beichen's heart was on Bailey Hongzhuang. Under Lan Borong's lead, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two arrived at their residence. The three of them were the distinguished guests of the Lan family. Naturally, their residence was arranged to be extremely comfortable and luxurious. On one hand, it showed the importance of the Lan family to them. On the other hand, it also showed the Lan family's background. You all can rest here for now. I will send someone to invite you over for lunch. By then, the young lord and the elders of the Lan family will be present. Lan Borong's face had a faint smile, as he introduced to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. After hearing this Lan Borong's departure, with Lan Qingyin's head, after Lanza's of, Lan with two of them with him of Uf's. S is right. S his, S's, S is the, S. S's rights. Of this of. Mo Yunjue narrowed his long narrow eyes. His lips curled into a faint smile, and a cold glint blossomed from the depths of his eyes. Logically speaking, with the status of the three of them, everyone should have come out to welcome them when they came to the Lan clan today. However, only Lan Borong came. This was undoubtedly a loss of face for them, as if they were insignificant people. On the other hand, the Lan family's disciples' attitude was probably incited by someone. Otherwise, a few disciples of the Lan family wouldn't have dared to say such things so brazenly. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes darkened. Lan Qingyan had suffered so much previously. This time she must be thinking of how to teach me a lesson. The cold reception in the morning was nothing, but I'm afraid this lunches will not be easy. Chapter 2659. Hongzhuang, if you speak like this, you're treating me like an outsider. Perhaps Lan Qingyan will take this cold reception seriously, but it doesn't affect me at all. Mo Yunjue's long eyebrows slanted. His handsome face was full of indifference. If he really cared about this extravagance and false reputation, then as the young lord of Shitian Pavilion, he would have appeared in front of everyone long ago. On the contrary, he always felt that this kind of extravagance was very troublesome. Just like this morning, it was more comfortable. Isn't this kind of trick a little petty? If Lan Qingyan is really the next head of the Lan family, then it won't be far from decline. Di Beichen's eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, flashing with light. His deep and magnetic voice was full of ridicule and ridicule. Did she think that this kind of cold reception would be enough to make them nervous? If Lan Qingyan wasn't childish enough, how could she have such a performance in the Battle of Zhuolu? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were as cold as ice. Before she met Lan Qingyan, she had only heard of Lan Qingyan's reputation and always regarded Lan Qingyan as a difficult enemy to deal with. However, after she crossed swords with Lan Qingyan, she understood that Lan Qingyan was only a proud daughter of heaven who was well protected by the family. She was fundamentally different from her, who climbed up from the bottom. The proud daughter of heaven of an aristocratic family was revered since young. No matter what she wanted, she didn't need to pay any price. On the contrary, they often had to pay a huge price or even their lives to get what they wanted. Therefore, from the beginning they were different. Forget it, let's wait for this feast of treachery to begin. Thinking about it, it's really interesting. Di Beichen's lips curled into an evil smile, revealing arrogance and haughtiness. This good show was waiting for them to take the stage. Mo Yunjue glanced at Di Beichen indifferently. If it's really a feast of treachery, once a big fight breaks out, you better be prepared. This time he was prepared to fight at the slightest disagreement. Although it wasn't easy for the three of them to break out of the encirclement in this huge Lan family, at least their destructive power wasn't small. Hearing this, Di Beichen chuckled. Don't worry, I'm more prepared than you. Same here. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the two people in front of her, who suddenly became very tacit. Her beautiful eyes revealed a bit of surprise, but more than that there was joy. There was clearly a battle waiting for them to fight, but they didn't feel nervous at all. At lunchtime, just as Lan Borong had said, someone came to lead them there. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two arrived, they saw that the entire hall was already filled with people, but the atmosphere was somewhat unusual. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately saw Lan Qingyan sitting at the top. Compared to 3 months ago, Lan Qingyan had lost a lot of weight. It was obvious that she had been tortured. However, his complexion was quite good. Although it was only a short 2 days, with Yu Xiqing's help, her recovery was excellent. Even so, Bailey Hongzhuang could still see that Lan Qingyan inadvertently revealed a bit of weakness and exhaustion. It seemed that everything was as they had expected. Lan Qingyan had used up a lot of energy last night, so today's appearance was like this. Chapter 2660. Lan Qingyan naturally saw Bailey Hongzhuang as well. She saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was similarly dressed in white, floating like dust. Her unparalleled features were cold and distant, just like an immortal from beyond the heavens. Her pitch-black eyes instantly filled with gloominess. That hatred and disgust could not be concealed. Similarly, there was also a thick sense of jealousy that could not be concealed. She had always liked white dresses because white dresses could set off her extraordinary temperament. However, at this moment Bailey Hongzhuang, who was wearing a white dress, actually had a feeling that she was inferior to her. This was the difference between a mortal and an immortal. It was only a simple white dress, yet Bailey Hongzhuang could actually give off such a feeling. Lan Qingyan herself also felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. The Lan family elders had long imprinted Bailey Hongzhuang's name deeply in their hearts, but they had never seen her with their own eyes. However, when Lan Jingquang, Yu Xiqing, and the Lan family elders saw Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, almost everyone's movements paused for a moment. Everyone's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Even the outstanding Di Beichen and Mo Yunju at the side did not have the heart to pay attention to her. That was because that peerlessly beautiful face was so familiar to him. It was so familiar that it made their hair stand on end. Second elder Lan Kaicheng stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze. The wine cup in his hand could not help but fall to the ground, emitting a crisp sound. However, Lan Kaicheng was completely unaware. His gaze seemed to have grown roots and he could not recover from his shock for a long time. 19 years ago, that graceful and outstanding figure was the hope of everyone in the Lan family. He was extraordinarily handsome. Every movement of his carried the power to convince people. He was always like the wind, carrying a kind of otherworldly temperament that made people feel comforted. Even though 19 years had passed, that shimmering elegance was still engraved in everyone's hearts and could not be erased. However, he had already disappeared for 19 years. Back then he had fought a bloody battle, and in the end, he had left with hatred. Even now, they still couldn't forget his resolute appearance. For 19 years they never heard from that man again. They understood that that person would probably never forgive them. However, as the elders of the family, it was not that they did not feel pained, but they could only think from the perspective of the family. In terms of debt, all the elders of the Lan family felt indebted to Lan Yunxiao. This debt could only be repaid after they went to the underworld. However, this peerless beauty in front of her was extremely similar to Lan Yunxiao and his wife. Lan Jingquang's originally cold expression couldn't help but widen his eyes when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang. He could no longer maintain his previous indifference and calmness. How could this be? These words kept appearing in Lan Jingquang's mind. This was impossible. It was impossible for that child to have survived. But why did this Bailey Hongzhuang look so much like Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing? Was there really such a coincidence in this world? Lan Qingyan suddenly realized that everyone around her had a shocked expression. She couldn't help but frown. What was wrong with everyone? Even if Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was outstanding, everyone shouldn't have such an expression, right? Chapter 2661. Bailey Hongzhuang enjoyed the shocked gazes of the Lan family. Facing her familiar face, the Lan family would probably recall everything that happened back then. That's right. She's back. The baby girl who was abandoned by all of them and almost lost her life had returned with a heart full of anger and the determination to take revenge. Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue quietly looked at each other. It seemed that they didn't need to say anything. The Lan family's shock was enough to explain everything. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to hide her identity, it would be very difficult. Because of her appearance, there were many things that didn't need to be proven. When Lan Borong saw the Lan family's expressions, he sighed in his heart. 3 months ago, when he first saw Bailey Hongzhuang, his expression wasn't much better than everyone's now. And this further proved that he wasn't the only one who felt the resemblance. As Lan Qingyin's savior, Yu Xiqing also came to today's banquet. The moment she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, Yu Xiqing had a bad premonition. Out of everyone present, she was the most familiar with Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's appearance. Because these past few years, the two of them had always been in her dungeon, so she often saw them. The face in front of her not only resembled Mu Lingbing, but also Mu Jin's. Almost at the first sight, Yu Xiqing was certain that this so-called Bailey Hongzhuang was Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's daughter. It was impossible for such a coincidence to exist in this world. All coincidences could be deliberate. Cough. When Lan Borong saw everyone staring blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but cough lightly, forcing everyone to return to their senses. Hearing this voice, Lan Jingquang and the others recovered from their thoughts and smiled again. However, this smile was still somewhat stiff and unnatural. Welcome to the Lan family. Your presence brings light to our humble dwelling. Lan Jingquang was the first to stand up. His handsome face revealed a trace of gentleness, like a poisonous snake. Although his attack didn't seem strong, it could kill in one strike. Master Quang, you're being too courteous. It's also our fortune to be able to come to the Lan clan to broaden our horizons. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two smiled, but this smile did not reach their eyes. Both sides were just flattering each other on the surface and feigning civility. Naturally, they were not stingy with their superficial pleasantries. The three of you please take a seat. Today's dishes are all the specialties of our Blue Sun City. I hope the three of you won't mind. Master Quang is too humble. I've long heard that Blue Sun City's dishes are top-notch. Today I'm fortunate enough to taste them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two slowly sat down. However, Lan Kaicheng and the others were still immersed in their own thoughts. Their previous thoughts had already been thrown to the back of their minds. All they wanted to know was whether or not Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Yunxiao had a relationship. If they weren't related, it would be too similar. However, if they were related, could it be that the young Empress of Limitless Palace was Lan Yixuan? Young Empress Bailey, you must properly taste our Lan family's specialties. I specially ordered people to prepare these to welcome you. Lan Qingyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a face full of smiles. However, her words had a hidden meaning. This luncheon was not for Bailey Hongzhuang to enjoy. Chapter 2662. Seeing Lan Qingyan's smile that hit a knife, Bailey Hongzhuang sneered in her heart. Compared to the big gift she had prepared, Lan Qingyan's Hongmen banquet was just a small scene. Come, let us all toast to the three heroes and welcome you. Lan Borong raised his wine cup and suggested. Hearing this, everyone in the Lan family raised their wine cups and welcomed the arrival of Bailey Hongzhuang, and the other two with smiles on their faces. If it wasn't for the fact that both sides were well aware of the situation, others would have thought that this was a harmonious scene. Between the cups, Lan Jingquang probed. Young Palace Master Bailey's age seems to be much younger than I expected. You should be younger than my Qingyan, right? Hearing Lan Jingquang's words, Di Beichen and the other two were well aware of the situation. It seemed that Lan Jingquang couldn't hold back his thoughts and wanted to quickly verify everything. And when Lan Jingquang asked this question, Lan Borong and the other Lan family elders couldn't help but reveal a concerned expression. They also wanted to know Bailey Hongzhuang's age. Even if they were certain that Lan Yixuan couldn't have survived, The appearance in front of them was too similar. They couldn't help but have a misconception. Perhaps everything wasn't as bad as they thought. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Her charming face was full of confidence, but she pretended not to understand. "Oh? How old is Miss Lan?" "I'm 22 this year." Lan Qingyin's voice was cold, her stomach full of emotions. Until now, she still didn't know what was going on. Why did everyone act so strangely when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang today? She couldn't be more familiar with her father's temper. With the other party's age, Lan Jingquang wouldn't care about this kind of thing. But now Lan Jingquang was acting out of character and suddenly asked about this. It was unavoidably strange. "Then she is indeed older than me." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Hearing her words, Lan Jingquang's eyes couldn't help but change a bit. He even wanted to ask if Bailey Hongzhuang was 19 years old, but asking that would be too obvious. When Lan Qingyan found out that Bailey Hongzhuang was younger than her, she revealed an unhappy expression. Wasn't this another way to prove that her talent in cultivation was not as good as Bailey Hongzhuang's? After Lan Jingquang asked this question, he didn't ask anything else. He needed to think about this matter at length. Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was too sudden. He had no idea at all. It was a little too hasty for him to make such a judgment in such a short time. The most important thing was, besides the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was shockingly similar to Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's, she couldn't connect them at all. However, regardless of whether Bailey Hongzhuang was related to Lan Yunxiao or not, they were enemies. Lan Jingquang loathed Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2663. Following Lan Borong's words, Lan Qingyan's eyes flashed with a hint of jealousy. Lan Qingyan had never liked anyone in all these years except for Di Beichen. Unfortunately, the person Di Beichen liked was her nemesis. Di Beichen's handsome face broke into a warm smile. He nodded. It's not far. After dealing with the Lan clan's matters, it would be time for their wedding. As soon as these words were spoken, Lan Jingquang and the other elders of the Lan family felt their hearts skip a beat. Once Tiangang sect and Limitless Palace joined forces, their influence would be unimaginable. As the Lan clan's young lord, Lan Qingyan and Bailey Hongzhuang had already formed a grudge. The better Bailey Hongzhuang's development, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. Lan Qingyan and Lan Jingquang looked at each other quietly. Lan Qingyan had told Lan Jingquang all her thoughts yesterday. She wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to die and to destroy the marriage between Limitless Palace and Tiangang sect. She must become Di Beichen's wife. Even if she didn't use the means, she only cared about the results. Lan Jingquang didn't think there was anything wrong with this. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang died, Lan Qingyan's qualifications and Di Beichen's were not bad. Young Palace Master Bailey, we can understand the small fights between young people. However, you actually poisoned Qingyan. Isn't this a bit too much? Lan Jingquang said lightly, but his eyes quietly became sharp. This luncheon wasn't meant to welcome Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two, but to denounce them for their crimes. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the hall froze. Bailey Hongzhuang sneered in her heart. It seemed that the main event was about to begin. This poison not only almost took our young lord's life, but it also tortured our young lord for so long. Lan Kaicheng followed up with a smile on his face, but there was a hint of viciousness in it. Even if there was a grudge between us during the Battle of Zhuolu, young Palace Master Bailey's actions are a little too ruthless. If he wanted to kill someone, he could just use poison. Bailey Hongzhuang's poison was not only to take Lan Qingyan's life, but also to torture her before she died. This kind of method was really ruthless to the extreme. The elders of the Lan family put down their wine glasses and stared at Bailey Hongzhuang with burning eyes. From their aggressive looks, it was clear that they would not rest until Bailey Hongzhuang gave a reasonable explanation. Master Quang, are you bringing up old scores with me? Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile as her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with coldness. I only want to seek justice for my daughter. Young Palace Master Bailey, please give me an explanation. Lan Jingquang put on a fake smile. From the moment Bailey Hongzhuang stepped into the Lan family, Bailey Hongzhuang's life was already in their hands. For Lan Qingyan, Bailey Hongzhuang must die. Bailey Hongzhuang, although we had a conflict during the Battle of Zhuolu, your methods are too despicable. You tortured me for 3 whole months. Do you want to torture me to death? Slap. Lan Qingyan threw down her chopsticks and stood up, looking aggressively at Bailey Hongzhuang. This was not the Battle of Zhuolu. Bailey Hongzhuang did not have that many helpers. On the contrary, everyone here was Lan Qingyan's helpers. Chapter 2664. After Lan Qingyan stood up, the elders of Lan Jingquang's faction also stood up one by one, their eyes unkind as they looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's unusually familiar face, they had a bad premonition. It would be best if they could take advantage of this opportunity to solve it. Seeing this, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue also stood guard beside Bailey Hongzhuang. The Lan family is really arrogant. We were invited here, but you put on such an attitude. This is really too much. Di Beichen's deep and handsome eyes were filled with haze. The Yuan power in his body surged at that moment, telling everyone in the Lan family that if they dared to make a move, he would not be an idiot. Young Sect Master Di, we are now questioning young Palace Master Bailey. We hope you will not interfere. Lan Jingquang looked straight at Di Beichen. He admired Di Beichen very much. If he could become a couple with Qingyan, it would be a beautiful story. Master Quang is threatening my wife, and now you want me to not interfere? Isn't this too ridiculous? Di Beichen sneered, his eyes becoming colder and colder. I'll say it right here. Whoever dares to touch my wife, I will not let them off. As soon as he said this, Di Beichen's cold gaze swept across everyone present. His aura was threatening. Lan Qingyan's pupils shrank. These words were like a needle that fiercely pierced her heart. Di Beichen was protecting Bailey Hongzhuang. Master Quang, although we are in your Lan family's territory, we are not at your mercy. Don't tell me you think we're just a few ordinary juniors? Mo Yunjue sneered. The threat in his words could not be more obvious. Mo Yunjue, the person that Bailey Hongzhuang likes isn't you. Yet you're still doing so much for her. Don't you think it's stupid? Lan Qingyan frowned and looked at Mo Yunjue with a puzzled expression. It was one thing for Di Beichen to protect Bailey Hongzhuang, but what about Mo Yunjue? Hearing this, Mo Yunjue laughed mockingly, his voice filled with ridicule and disdain. What I, Mo Yunjue, want to do is not up to others to tell me what to do. If I don't protect Hongzhuang, am I supposed to protect trash like you? Mo Yunjue did not try to hide the disgust and disdain in his eyes. Although there were many women in this world, most of them were ordinary women. For a woman like Lan Qingyan, he would rather live in the dark. Lan Qingyan's expression froze and her face turned ugly. Mo Yunjue, don't go too far. I advise you to think carefully. If you really take action, your Lan clan may be fine now, but you won't be able to bear the revenge you will face later. Di Beichen stared coldly at Lan Jingquang. This man was as ruthless as they knew. If a conspiracy didn't work, then they would use an overt scheme. They came this time because they had nothing to fear. Seeing Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue's resolute attitude, Lan Jingquang's eyes flashed with a touch of complexity. If it was only Limitless Palace, then it was nothing. However, if Tiangang Sect and Shutian Pavilion were added, then it would be a big problem. Speaking of which, they underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang's charm. Seeing that the atmosphere had changed again, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed, and her lips curved into a mocking smile. But the words that came out of her mouth made everyone present stunned again. Chapter 2665. Her cold words were filled with indifference and disgust, but they were powerful and resonating. Lan Jingquang and the rest of the Lan family were stunned. Lan Qingyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. She didn't understand why Bailey Hongzhuang would say such a thing. Yu Xiqing also raised her head, unable to conceal the shock on her face. Could it be that her judgment was correct? Was this girl really Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's daughter? But judging from Lan Yishuan's situation, She had no chance of surviving. She could have ended Lan Yixuan's life, but she preferred to see Mu Lingbing and the rest unable to seek help and watch her daughter slowly die. Only then would the pain be maximized. Lan Borong's eyes flashed with disbelief. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly mentioning Lan Yunxiao at a time like this couldn't be a coincidence. Lan Jingquang's face darkened. His malicious eyes flashed with hesitation as he asked in a low voice, "What do you mean by that?" The Lan family's ability to bully others is indeed well-deserved. Back then, after Master Kuang did those inhumane things, was this how he treated Lan Yunxiao with the elders of the Lan family with a hypocritical face? No wonder you couldn't sit on the house head seat. If someone like you really became the house head, the entire Lan family would become a dark power, wouldn't it? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips hooked up in an enchanting and mocking smile. Her originally elegant and refined appearance suddenly revealed a strange flirtatious charm. However, her words were like a knife that ruthlessly stabbed into Lan Jingquang's heart. His expression instantly darkened and his eyes were terrifyingly cold. Lan Jingquang only felt that these words were incomparably familiar. It was just like how Lan Hongtai had refused to let him become the next house head. This was almost the same content, but it was also the truth he was most unwilling to accept. The expressions of all the Lan clan elders froze, revealing a bit of awkwardness and anger from embarrassment. What happened back then was beyond all of their expectations, but in order to protect the Rainbow Divine Pearl from losing its effect, they had no other choice. Unfortunately, no matter how much they emphasized this reason, the scene of all of them joining hands to stop Lan Yunxiao back then was a real one. They still remembered Lan Yunxiao's grief and indignation at that time. He was such a person who loved the Lan family, but in the end, he had no choice but to pick up a weapon and attack them. Masses of Lan family members collapsed. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were covered in blood as they glared at Lan Jingquang and the others, who were being protected by the elders. It was an indescribable pain and unwillingness, betrayal and hatred that came from the depths of his heart. "You crazy girl who doesn't know any etiquette, what nonsense are you talking about?" Lan Jingquang raised his right hand and a gust of wind blasted towards Bailey Hongzhuang. The airwave blew up Bailey Hongzhuang's hair. Just as it was about to fall on Bailey Hongzhuang's body, Di Beichen suddenly made his move. With a light wave, the airwave disappeared without a trace. However, Di Beichen's expression turned even colder. Angry out of humiliation, Bailey Hongzhuang looked mockingly at Lan Jingquang and sneered. "Now that Lan Qingyan wants to use the same method to deal with me, I'm afraid it won't work." Chapter 2666. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Her cold and indifferent words had an invisible killing power that tore apart the disguise of Lan Borong and the others, revealing their bloody wounds. To the elders in Lan Jingquang's faction, this was a past they didn't want to recall. But to Lan Borong and the others, this was the greatest pain in their hearts. "What does my Lan family's matters have to do with you? If you continue to shoot your mouth off like this, don't blame us for being impolite." Lan Kaicheng could no longer maintain his face. That matter back then was a huge conspiracy, and he had also participated in it. But since he had already done it, he wouldn't regret it. However, if this matter was brought to the table, it would be too shameful. "Impolite?" Bailey Hongzhuang sneered. "Didn't Master Kuang already become impolite to me?" In the next instant, Bailey Hongzhuang fiercely slammed her palm on the table in front of her. "Bah!" A muffled sound rang out. Following that, the entire table was split into pieces and the fragments flew everywhere. The wine and dishes on the table fell to the ground with a loud bang, producing a crisp sound. "I'm not Lan Yunxiao, who was forced by you all in the past. I won't accept such a huge accusation of putting Lan Qing to death on my head." Bailey Hongzhuang's deep phoenix eyes blossomed with a dazzling brilliance. A tyrannical and unparalleled aura erupted from her body, as if she was born in a superior position. That powerful aura caused the entire hall to stagnate. Silence. The entire hall fell into silence in an instant. Everyone was shocked as they looked at the woman in front of them with a threatening aura. Even when she was bristling with anger, Her peerless elegance still emitted an astonishing beauty that caused people's hearts to tremble. Lan Qingyan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. It was hard to imagine that Bailey Hongzhuang, who was younger than her, could release such power. With everything that young Lord Lan had done, so what if my wife vented her anger? As long as she didn't take your life on the spot, this is already very merciful. Di Beichan coldly opened his mouth, his incomparably handsome face full of biting coldness. My poison was clearly cured by my grandaunt, Lan Qingyan emphasized. She didn't think that Bailey Hongzhuang would go against her conscience and say such words. It was clearly Yu Siqing who cured her poison. Otherwise, her soul would have already returned to the ninth heaven. Young Lord Lan, hearing you say this is a bit funny. Chapter 2668. Could it be? Young Palace Master Bailey knows the art of foresight and can predict when young Palace Master Lan's great aunt will cure you? Mo Yunjue's lips curled into a sneer. His light words were full of sarcasm. You're all in cahoots. Naturally, you're speaking up for Bailey Hongzhuang. Don't treat us like fools. Lan Qingyan didn't believe it at all. She only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were in cahoots. If she really believed it, then she would be a fool. What's the truth? Why don't you just confront them face to face? Di Beichan said coldly. Hearing this, Lan Jingquang and the others couldn't help but look at Yu Siqing. With one glance, Lan Jingquang saw the worry and awkwardness in Yu Siqing's eyes. Thump! Lan Jingquang's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth? Great Master Yu Siqing, since they refused to admit it, then I'll have to trouble you to confront them. Lan Kaiqing immediately said. Today's feast at Hongmen, they had properly prepared. How could they let Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two refuse to admit it and get away with it? Hearing that, although Yu Siqing felt a little guilty, she could only stand up and force herself to confront him. Qingyan's poison was cured by me. What's the problem? Yu Siqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a cold gaze. The aura of a great master also lingered. With Yu Siqing's experience, how could she not be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, a girl who had just stepped out of the house? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. I've heard of Great Master Yu Siqing's name before, but I never thought that after seeing it today. Your shamelessness is really amazing. You little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Yu Siqing was furious. Her origin energy turned into flying blades and attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. She, Yu Siqing, had been respected in the Shangxian continent for so many years, but never had a junior dared to insult her to her face. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her hand and blocked Yu Siqing's flying blade. At the same time, she also threw a flying blade back. A strand of black hair fell to the ground as Yu Siqing's face darkened even further. Her malicious and venomous eyes were terrifying to the extreme. Do you think that only you can attack me and I can't retaliate? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were fierce, facing Yu Siqing's cold eyes without the slightest fear. According to what I know, the Yu clan has suffered a huge calamity. So the entire Yu clan has already moved to the Blue Sun City sphere of influence. You must have been forced by the situation, so you took all the credit for yourself, right? His deep phoenix eyes flickered with a sharp cold light, penetrating the bottom of Yu Siqing's heart. In front of Bailey Hongzhuang's sharp eyes, Yu Siqing was surprised to find that she had a feeling of being seen through. How could such a young girl do this? If it were any other day, I wouldn't care about what you've done. But since you've hurt my reputation, I can't just sit by and watch. I don't believe that you can't cure the poison in 3 months. How can you cure it at this critical moment? Then, isn't this too much of a coincidence? Faced with Bailey Hongzhuang's aggressive questioning, even Yu Siqing was at a loss for words. Chapter 2669. After seeing Yu Xiqing's performance, Lan Qingyan and the rest, who were originally full of confidence, couldn't help but change their expressions. Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was too confident. On the contrary, Yu Xiqing appeared to be a little guilty. If this poison was really cured by Yu Xiqing, logically speaking, Yu Xiqing shouldn't be so guilty. In reality, regarding the sudden cure of the poison, Lan Qingyan and Lan Jingquang had some doubts in their hearts. Previously, Yu Xiqing had always acted as if she couldn't do anything about this poison. They had even lost all hope. However, at this time, Yu Xiqing had suddenly cured Lan Qingyan of the poison. Without any warning, it was just that sudden. Although they felt it was very strange at the time, they couldn't think of any other reason other than Yu Xiqing's explanation and didn't think much about it. However, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, they couldn't help but start to question it. If Yu Xiqing could really cure Lan Qingyan of the poison, she should have been immensely proud of herself. How could she have done it so quietly? However, in this situation, they would rather believe that Yu Xiqing was telling the truth than Bailey Hongzhuang. So what if it's a coincidence? There are so many coincidences in this world. Everything is just a coincidence. Yu Xiqing stared coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang. She had already made up her mind. No matter what, she was the one who cured this poison. As long as she didn't admit it, Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't be able to prove her innocence. With Yu Xiqing's reputation in the Shangxian continent, it was needless to say that everyone would believe her. Seeing Yu Xiqing's confidence, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled. Since that's the case, I have a very simple way to prove who's right. I wonder if you dare to give it a try? Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's confident look, Yu Xiqing had a bad feeling in her heart. However, the arrow was already knocked on the bow. If she hesitated, she would also lose. Speak. Unfortunately, I have an identical poison here. I can find anyone to consume it now. Since you can detoxify the poison, why don't you detoxify it again? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yu Xiqing mockingly. From the fact that Yu Xiqing was unable to detoxify the poison within 3 months, she had already concluded that Yu Xiqing was unable to detoxify the poison. She came here today to confront the Lan family, and on the other hand, she didn't mind giving Yu Xiqing a tight slap. Looking at Yu Xiqing's face that had turned the color of pig liver, Bailey Hongzhuang found it funny. Yu Xiqing had thought highly of herself for so many years. This slap was probably enough to make Yu Xiqing suffer. Yu Xiqing didn't know how to react to Bailey Hongzhuang's suggestion. She thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had gotten the poison by chance. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang not only knew the effects of this poison, but also had the same poison. As a result, she was now riding a tiger and unable to get off. Because of Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the originally aggressive Yu Xiqing had turned into a mute. Even the stupidest people present understood the situation. The result is already very clear. I believe that I don't need to say anything more, right? Chapter 2670. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the faces of Lan Jingquang and the others became a bit awkward. Originally, they were full of confidence, but now they were being checkmated. However, this was something that they had never thought of. In a moment, everyone looked at Yu Xiqing with disgust. Who would have thought that Yu Xiqing would do such a thing to take all the credit for herself? In these 2 days, Yu Xiqing had been acting extremely arrogant, as if she was the benefactor of the Lan family. However, all of this was fake, and Yu Xiqing was enjoying it with a clear conscience. She was too shameless. Lan Jingquang's face was as gloomy as water. He looked at Yu Xiqing with eyes filled with anger. If it was only the Lan family who found out, then so be it. However, she was exposed in front of everyone. Even if they didn't know, in the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they would think that they were in cahoots. This was no different from bringing shame to the entire Lan family. Yu Xiqing naturally knew that being exposed like this was extremely shameful. She also didn't think that there would be a day when she would be exposed. This Bailey Hongzhuang was young, but her words and actions were watertight. It seemed that the other party came prepared. Perhaps, when she said that she was the one who cured Lan Qingyan, this Bailey Hongzhuang already had a plan. However, looking at the magnificent Bailey Hongzhuang in front of her, Yu Xiqing felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if she had seen her somewhere before. This figure was vaguely familiar, but she couldn't remember when she had seen it before. But she couldn't deny that she, Yu Xiqing, had fallen into a trap today. The three of us came from afar as guests of the Lan family. We didn't think that the Lan family would frame us. If you don't welcome us, just say so. Why do you have to do such a thing? Dibaichen curved his sexy lips. His handsome face was bloodthirsty and stern. It was clearly a rhetorical question, but one could hear the threat and anger in it. If it were just three ordinary young people, Lan Jingquang and the others could ignore them. However, these three people's identities couldn't be underestimated. If they didn't do something right, the Lan family would suffer unbearable revenge. Even if your poison didn't kill me, the pain I've suffered for the past 3 months was caused by you. Isn't that too much? Lan Qingyan glared at Bailey Hongzhuang. In such a short period of time, she had cast all of this aside. To her, these 3 months of pain was the most unbearable. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, her phoenix eyes slightly raised, a bright light blooming in her eyes. Her voice instantly became cold and low. Lan Qingyan, you haven't been living in your dreams since you were young? Everyone knew that it was normal to lose one's life in the Battle of Zhualu. If I had fallen into your hands, I would have been dead by now. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for not having the ability. The fact that I didn't kill you with my poison is already giving face to the Lan family. Even if I had poisoned you, what can you do now? If the entire Lan family only uses this reason to question me, once this news gets out, it will be a laughing stock. Chapter 2671. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were like cannonballs exploding, and Lan Qingyan's originally aggressive attitude gradually turned into a guilty conscience. Because what Bailey Hongzhuang said was the basic rule of the Shangxian continent. Many cultivators had died in the Battle of Zhualu. If Bailey Hongzhuang had killed her in the Battle of Zhualu, the Lan family could only find another reason to pursue the matter. The problem was, would Limitless Palace, who was also a first-rate power, be afraid? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't poison her and only tortured her. As long as this news spread out, reason would be on Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Their Lan family was in the wrong. Lan Qingyan's red lips parted slightly, as if someone had grabbed her throat, but she couldn't say a single word. I don't care if you really didn't know, but you slandered me. This is the truth. The illustrious Lan family, don't tell me you don't want to admit it just because you have more people? Bailey Hongzhuang crossed her arms in front of her chest and calmly looked at the Lan family's upper echelons. She had the aura of someone who wouldn't panic even if Emtitai collapsed in front of her. Dibaichen and Mo Yunjue stood beside Bailey Hongzhuang without saying a word. Just their actions showed their attitude. This time the Lan family was in the wrong. If they didn't apologize, they wouldn't let this matter go. Seeing this, Lan Kaicheng and the other elders couldn't help but look at Lan Jingquang. This matter was completely led by Lan Jingquang. Now that things had developed to this point, it was completely out of their expectations. As for what to do, it was up to Lan Jingquang to decide. Lan Jingquang's head drooped slightly, his face as gloomy as water. That shadow covered his eyes, making it impossible for others to see through his thoughts. He originally wanted to use this feast of hongmen to dampen Bailey Hongzhuang's momentum. He didn't expect to go for wool and come home shorn. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang had a handle on him. If they apologized, the Lan family would undoubtedly lose face. However, this wasn't what he cared about the most. What he was most concerned about was how terrifying Bailey Hongzhuang's mind was. Logically speaking, under the circumstances of the Battle of Zhualu, Bailey Hongzhuang should have poisoned him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not do so. She seemed to have expected this day. It was precisely because of this that she was so fearless when she came to the Lan clan alone. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang had already thought of a way to deal with all the moves they had prepared. According to his understanding, this Bailey Hongzhuang had just become the young palace master of Limitless Palace. However, in the face of their Lan family's battle array, Bailey Hongzhuang remained calm and composed. This temperament alone was enough to prove her extraordinariness. Comparing the two, it was not strange that Lan Qingyan was defeated by her. Faced with that face that was so similar to Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing, Lan Jingquang couldn't help but feel a strong sense of dissatisfaction. This feeling was just like when he was pressed down by Lan Yunxiao. He lost again. We didn't investigate this matter clearly. I apologize to young Palace Master Bailey. Please forgive us. Lan Jingquang abruptly raised his head. That feminine and handsome face was filled with a faint smile, as if the previous hostility had never occurred. Seeing the speed at which Lan Jingquang's expression changed, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sneer. You're tuning into the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.